Okay, this is a call to order of the Bridgeport Board of Education's special meeting for today, Thursday, September 15th, 2022. The time is 7:01 p.m. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Secretary, would you call the roll?
I got to pick up an answer. Thank you. Sybil Allen. Christine Baptiste Perez. Albert Benahan.
Present.
Bobby Brown.
Present.
Erica Castillo.
Present.
Michael Macaron.
Present.
Joseph Sokolovic.
Present.
John Weldon.
Present.
And Joseph Lombard present.
Okay. We're going to move to public comment. First on the list is Lyle Hassan Jones.
Good evening. But that's good. Okay. Yeah. I'm just here out of concern about what they say is going to be a new search for a new superintendent. The last time that we were here to select a superintendent, I was really disappointed because the board at that time was bought and sold. We had two qualified African-American people and one Tasani who at that time wasn't qualified. And the board selected to put an unqualified person. Instead of two qualified black people, we picked one white person who was unqualified. So that thing that we had to be twice as good to be accepted seemed like that really rang with that board that was here at that time. And now we're here again. And I guess Mrs. Asani is taking another job in Fairfield. And we're going to do another search where the taxpayer dollars is going out again. And I think that, and I don't know what the process is, that's why I'm just asking. We had Miss Denise Clemens, who was one of the top candidates because we had three, and we had a brother from Baltimore. And I think that if there was a process, like especially of elimination, now that Mr. Sani has another job, that what is the process of bringing in a sister like Denise Clemens, who was homegrown, is still qualified, and is still in the city. So these are some of the things that I want to say. And if we have this search, I tell you, to see this cronyism and these political connections, we want to make sure that this time that the board ain't rigged like it was the last time. Because it was rigged. And you know that. If there were if there was one black person who was unqualified and there was two white people that's qualified, it ain't no way in question you would have gave that person the job. It's no way. I'm just being honest. It's no way. I mean, I should have been able to apply for the position because there's a criteria that says you're supposed to meet a certain criteria before you can even apply. So this type of just blatant stuff, I don't know why it wasn't a revolution in this city behind some foolishness like that. And so now we're here again, and we're not going to watch a rigged election again. I'm not saying many of you board members weren't on the board at that time, but those who were bought and sold, because there's no way that you can put someone in over our kids who haven't met the qualifications when you had two other people who are highly qualified. That's just simple mathematics. So we hope that this time that you really consider a qualified person who really meet the criteria. And I think you should reconsider Denise Clemens, who was here and who was number 2 on the list. of people being qualified to do the city. And then another thing in closing, you pull the sham on the public, because you act like he was just going to be in for 6 months and don't worry about it. We're going to open it back up after 6 months and then you can come back. That never happened. So it was a blatant lie. You deceived the public and the people. So we don't want to be deceived anymore. We want to make sure this process is fair and we get the right person for our children in the city of Bridgeport. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll note for the record that Ms. Baptiste Perez and Ms. Allen have joined the meeting. Next on the list is Dasha Spell.
Good evening. Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I'm actually here as a member of the 132nd Democratic Town Committee. Public meeting and executive sessions, 9150. This is from your bylaws. Public meeting. All meetings of the Board of Education for the official transaction of business shall be open to the public except that the board may, by affirmative vote of 2/3 of the members present and voting, meet in executive session for purposes specific in Connecticut General Statutes 1-206. Now, last Thursday, a week from today, there was a meeting at Central High School. As a parent and a community leader in this community, I wanted to attend that meeting. I rushed to get to Central to come and hear about the process of this superintendent search. And unbeknownst to me, there was a police officer at the doorway waiting for us when we got there. Now, we were informed that the chairman of the board called and asked for the police to be there. Once again, this is a blatant disrespect to not only the parents, stakeholders in the community, but it also shows the lack of collaborations with the community. There was a handful of us. There is no reason in the world why a police officer had to be called in. And FYI, I would like to know who paid him. Is it something that city paid for as overtime, or was it something that the Board of Ed paid for overtime to stop us from coming to sit and listen into a meeting? When it was posted online, it never said that it was an executive session. And from what emails I got from different people, because we asked the question, was we going to be hindered from going to this meeting? We were told no. So at the end of the day, if it's in your actual bylaws that you have to publish, whether it's a special meeting, public meeting, and you have to have a 2/3 vote for it to be an executive meeting, which it was not, you violate it. And you disregard the same bylaws you're supposed to follow. That's not fair. At the end of the day, as a parent in this community, if I come to a meeting by myself, if I come with 500 people, we have every right to sit and listen to what's going on because it impacts our kids. I understand that everyone here may or may not have a child in this school district, but I do. And once again, and I say this over and over again, my child is not going to be a statistic. You're not going to sit here and make decisions and not think that I'm not going to put my 2 cents in it. And because of the actions that happened last week, trust and believe, moving forward, you will be seeing not only a lot of me, but you will also be seeing how I handle business as well. Because this right here is a total blatant disrespect. And I understand that you're leaving the school district, Mr. Testani, but as a parent, you're still over my child. I'm standing here telling y'all that I'm very, very hurt and I feel disrespected, and you're on your cell phone. This is the kind of nonsense that I'm talking about. The last time I was at the podium, I was very polite and I was very nice. Also, I came in professional. Today, I'm a parent. I'm pissed off. I'm annoyed, and I'm in 2-3 with this nonsense. I gave y'all a suggestion last meeting. Let's look at the previous candidates, bring them to the table, invite them to the table to have a conversation. If they say no, fine then you move on to a search. But why are we spending additional money looking for and searching for superintendents when you have candidates that you can just look at the pool and decide? Lastly, and I said this at Central, not taking it back, 2/3 votes, 2/3 vote. You were an elected official, you each have a vote. I need for some of y'all to step up, get some kahunas, and start making decisions that impact our children and not the person sitting next to you. Because at the end of the day, all y'all have your education. Our kids don't. So stop playing with my kids. Seriously, stop playing with the kids. If y'all don't like something, don't sit here and don't sit behind the curtain. If you're gonna do something, do it. If you're not gonna do something, at least say it. Stop sitting here pussyfooting around, because this is nonsense. Thank you. Have a blessed night.
Lourdes Delgado.
Good evening. I'm Lourdes Delgado, Director of the Faith and Education Coalition. I am a former educator here in the Bridgeport schools, and although I do not live in Bridgeport, I represent the children of over 30 Hispanic churches in the city of Bridgeport. The reason that I am here today is, first of all, I don't want to echo what has already been said, but I do want to point out that we were very concerned, I was very concerned about the meeting last Thursday, and it was quite evident that there is dissension among the ranks. I strongly recommend that the board focus on its goals, because things are obviously not transparent to the members themselves when that meeting was called last week, and some of the members understood that that meeting was out of order. We need to focus on high achievement. Above all of the expectations of the new school superintendent, priority has to be student achievement. And as you are focusing on determining what the expectations for that superintendent, priority has to be someone who has a record of working with its community toward high achievement. The recent SBAC scores, the recent results, I don't know that they're going to be reflected. I don't know that they're going to be presented here, as I don't necessarily see them reflected in the agenda, but that has to be priority, although it is teaching and learning there. The other thing I do want to point out under here, it says old business, none to be transacted. I don't believe that the public is aware, has been informed of the number of staff who were non-certified, both special education, general education, and specialists. And as a community, we need to know that the students are being served by certified staff, because priority is student achievement. That has to move everything. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Delgado. Joanne Kennedy.
Good evening, everyone. I'm just going to read into the record the letter that you were sent earlier today. And I'm going to say that scripture again. Suffer the little children to come unto me and forbid them not, for such is the kingdom of heaven. You're going to have to answer to God for the things that you do. To the members of the Board of Education, the Greater Bridgeport NAACP and its Education Committee recently wrote a letter to the Board of Education Chair and its members of the BBOE's failure to be transparent and inclusive in the Bridgeport Superintendent selection process. Given the political climate in this nation and the significant efforts being made by special interests seeking control and manipulate public education, it is imperative that all local boards of public school education be not only transparent, but be inclusive and reflective of its community. On September 8th, the board held an exclusive meeting hiding in plain sight at our largest high school, Central High School, sequestering themselves upstairs in the upstairs classroom guarded by a police officer on scarce public finance overtime dollars. 4 BBOE members opted to remain instead with the public who were denied access and entry into the staircase leading up to the second floor location of the secret meeting. The attending public remained strong and united while participated via Facebook Live to witness and participants. Facebook Live to witness the actions of the BBOE chairperson, John Weldon, who arbitrarily and unilaterally refused public entry and access to the most important work the BBOE is charged with doing. The selection of the new superintendent, including an interim or acting superintendent, greatly impacts 20,000 student scholars and their families who attend Bridgeport Public Schools. Monday, September 12th, the BBOE had to cancel a regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting due to Chairperson John Weldon's failure to publicly post the agenda. Chairperson Weldon's express duty is to ensure that the BBOE agenda is posted within the requirements of the Connecticut Freedom of Information Act. Yet he continues to fail to uphold the basic and expressed duty. Chairperson Weldon is one of 2 white males elected as Republicans on the Bridgeport Board of Education amongst a majority of Democrats and working families elected BBOE members in a public school district where most of the children, parents, and stakeholders are Black and brown and represented by the Democratic and working family parties. Yet, Chairperson John Weldon is using the tactics lauded by National Republic gang of dissidents, I'm saying that wrong, it's a French word, sorry, who are attempting to hijack the public education system, i.e. Texas, Florida, Georgia, through manipulation and control. We must demand the Bridgeport Board of Education work on behalf of the families and children attending the Bridgeport Public Schools. We must demand transparency and inclusion. We must demand equity and accountability. We, the people, are the power. For without the people, who are the parents, there are no children. For without the children, who are the student scholars, there are no schools and therefore no local boards of education. Be strong and powerful. Demand, demand, demand. Do not only have a seat at the table, demand to have your voice heard and acted upon. Together we stand, together we can put an end to this madness. In power, the undersigned. Bridgeport Working Family Party's Town Committee, Connecticut Working Families Party, Greater Bridgeport NAACP, Greater Bridgeport NAACP Education Committee, Al-Aziz Islamic Center, Advocacy for Gap Elimination and Equity in Education Earnings and Environment, LLC, Julie Mar Ortiz, Connecticut 23rd Senatorial State Senate District, and sorry, let's say this. Make the Road Action, Connecticut. Greater Bridgeport Ed Goins Black Democratic Club, Dasha Spell, the 132nd Democratic Town Committee member, and Bridgeport Generation Now votes. Thank you.
Tony Barr.
How you doing? Trying to clear my throat a little bit. Please don't start my time yet. I was enjoying my favorite candy, payday. Took advantage of these kids. Everybody got paid. Leaving us in a deficit makes no sense. A ton of bad contracts. You get to walk away and backdoor it. I get all that. We walked the halls of Notre Dame together as friends, and you guys are a total disrespect to the city of Bridgeport. I spent half my life in federal penitentiary, and y'all should respect me more than anyone should respect you guys on this board. This is a continuous, repeat itself. Nothing gets done. We wonder why the kids are killing each other. We have a broken police department, a broken mayor, a broken school system, and a broken community led by white folks. Taught our people the only thing that they can do is support you guys as our leaders. And we do it diligently. We do it the way we worship God. We worship you people to take care of our people. We've never, ever even thought about doing anything that would make sense in the city of Bridgeport. Deals, it's called payday. So you get to walk away unscathed, fresh start, $40,000 less than you would have taken here, to walk over there to be in your own community that you'll feel comfortable about being in. Don't care about my community. I can still see the people years ago, 4 years ago, myself included, say, hey, you know what? I only roll with you because my people already made the decision that you would be the person that would lead the black and brown kids. I want to say to all the parents and everyone in the city of Bridgeport, for all the people that done sold out religiously, it's not your fault at all. And you don't get God's kingdom doing what we're doing. People think they can play with God and play with religion and come up in here and scream and yell and then go out and take a paycheck. That's cool too. But again, the biggest payday is going to be when Bridgeport finally realize that they don't need white people to be their leaders. That's when Bridgeport will become worthy of something. But here's the catch to that: through gentrification, through all the evictions, they'll realize that in Waterbury and Sonia Derby, not in Bridgeport. So y'all guys are good at what you do. You taught me. The only thing I can honestly say, and you know Father Bill too, Father Bill taught me one thing. He said, Tony Barr, always believe that you're worth something and there's no one on the face of this earth better than you. I truly believe that. I live that life every single day, watching my own people cut my throat, stab me in the back, and God keep me fresh, always making a difference in my community. I'm going to end it on this note. I'm not here to sugarcoat anything. We're looking at what's called leaders in our community. And to me, okay, you know what, if and I'm gonna end this, I'm sorry. I'm gonna end it on this. Why don't our community start paying for our kids? Why don't we start paying for them? Why don't we start doing something that makes sense? Instead of coming here pretending that we concerned when we know damn well we're not concerned. Okay? God bless y'all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barr. Joe Gritz?
Definitely concerned.
Basically everybody before me said what I wanted to say, but I'm still going, even though I'm a community leader, I come here as a parent. And for us to, like Ms. Kennedy was speaking on, go to Central and not be allowed in the meeting, that was disrespectful. Well, first, this meeting is disrespectful because, to be honest, besides Tony, and I believe that's more personal, that you guys didn't look Ms. Kennedy in her face. Y'all was messing with y'all phones. Y'all wasn't paying attention. I'm only speaking to the two I'm looking dead at. The rest of the board was. And I think that's disrespectful. Y'all looking like y'all tired, like y'all don't care. Weldon, you look like you about to fall asleep right now. And that's, we don't need that type of, energy, and what we got going on with these kids. And for those who showed up at Central to have to be in that hall like, prisoners where we couldn't get upstairs because the police was there, whoever hired them. And then instead of being men, as you two are, that I'm looking at, even coming down at the end and saying something to us, y'all snuck out the back door. People took time off their job or whatever, to cook meals home, whatever. We showed up, numerous of us, and we was on Facebook Live to let other people know. And I just feel like it's just, this whole thing's been disrespectful. And I hope y'all resign or just move on with with those who are that care. Salute to the Board of Ed that was downstairs with us, you know, Al and Joe, Bobby, Christine, Castillo, you know, those that stood with us and even spoke to us. Even if some things I heard I disagree with, they faced us. That's all I wanted to say.
They don't want to be here to the door.
Samantha Cheatham.
My name is Samantha Cheatham. I have a parent. I am a parent. I'm the PAC president. I'm part of the DTC. I watched something go on in our school last year where my students don't have no teachers, no nothing. They leave and go into high school with no education, period, because they had no students, no teachers teaching them whatsoever. Now we're coming into a new year of 2023, and they still have no teachers. I have my fourth graders sitting on the floor in the classroom with no desks, no teachers, no nothing. We don't owe Testani nothing. We owe y'all 9 people that we voted in something. I don't owe that man no argument, no nothing. We owe y'all something because y'all the ones supposed to be fighting for our kids. Y'all kids already graduated or they up in Shelton or Derby up in them good schools. When we got these schools down here in Bridgeport that's getting no help, no teachers, no nothing. At the end of the day, if y'all don't want to help us or speak up for our kids or only speak up to get y'all grants and y'all money and the stuff that y'all need to step off. Because other than that, we got kids that's in here that can't go to private schools, that can't do stuff, and they can't get good grades because y'all ain't giving them the teachers enough. And if y'all keep giving them nothing, they're going to give y'all nothing. We watching teachers quit every day. How do the teachers get to quit and walk out of school? They should sign a contract to stay on until the next year. They should not be able to get up in the middle of a session a day and walk out of school, and then these kids don't have no teachers teaching them, period. They just could leave. That ain't fair to our kids. Right.
And this is what we watching going on in our system. I watched it for 2 years. I didn't speak up last year, but y'all will see and hear me every time. Testani leaving, so I don't owe him nothing. We owe y'all, Christine, you, Miss Allen, Labardi, Weldon, Brown, you and you. I don't want to talk to Testani. I want to talk to y'all, because y'all the people we put in them seats to speak up for our kids. We didn't go out and vote and speak on people. We put y'all there to speak on our kids. It don't matter how nobody feel against nobody. We still need y'all to get out here and fight for our kids. Fight. Because they have nothing. They have no teachers, no nothing. It should not be like that. If y'all ain't having meetings about PACs, y'all need to be having meetings about where's the teachers. Where's these kids learning at? They're not learning nothing. They're barely coming home with homework. What's the point of an after-school program if they don't got no teachers teaching them to get to that point? That's a waste of their time. A waste of our time as parents waking up, getting them to school, and they don't got no teacher. That's the part that's bothering me.
Oh, mama. Oh, mama.
And it's been like this for 2 years. So going into a second year, they still don't got no teachers? It ain't adding up. It ain't one school. It ain't 2 schools. It's like 20 of them. What fear is that to our kids? Y'all need to get yourself together. Y'all need to figure if y'all scared to stand up to them about losing y'all job or whatever else y'all go, find a new job because this is free. Or quit this and go on to your job that counts the most. Or your programs or whatever y'all got. Go there. Because we don't need y'all here if y'all not going to fight for our kids.
Thank you. That concludes public comment. I'm going to dispense with the chairman's report. We'll go to committee reports and referrals. First one being Superintendent Search Committee. I'm going to talk now.
Point of order?
No, point of order. No.
Approval of minutes?
We don't have approval of minutes. No, it's not. So, a couple of weeks ago.
There was approving meeting?
There is no meeting minutes. We don't approve meeting minutes at special meetings. This is September 15th, special meeting. Okay. So, a couple of weeks ago, the board created what is called a personnel search committee. And perhaps it wasn't completely clear to everyone what that is. and what its purpose is and what it can and cannot do. So I'm going to read verbatim from the statute, which is section 1-200, part 7. Personnel Search Committee is a body appointed by a public agency, like the Board of Education, whose sole purpose is to recommend to the appointing agency, the Board of Education, a candidate or candidates for an executive level employment position. Members of a Personnel Search Committee shall not be considered in determining whether there is a quorum of the appointing or any other public agency. It further defines that the term meeting, as it relates to public meetings, does not include any meeting of a personnel search committee for executive level employment candidates. So personnel search committees operate outside of the meeting posting requirements, but it's balanced. They also cannot take any action. So while they meet privately, they don't take any action. Any formal action must be taken publicly here in this room when we are functioning as the Board of Education. Now, a couple of weeks ago, a couple of board members released that we were having a personnel search committee meeting. And I don't think they fully understood what I just said here. And I think they also didn't fully understand what we were meeting there for. The only thing that we were intending to do, and that we did, is we reviewed 2 proposals from the only 2 Connecticut-based educational search firms. We called in one of the proposers that we had some questions for. We asked some questions, we received some answers, and then when it was done, we left. With respect to, as it was stated, leaving through the back door, a police lieutenant came to the meeting room and gave an impression that there was a much larger group than was really downstairs, and that it was very volatile. And it was his recommendation that we leave, end the meeting and leave. It was not for myself until after the fact that I saw some social media postings that it looked like it was only about 4 or 5 people. So for my part, it was a little misrepresented to me, and I was following the instructions of a police lieutenant. And if he tells me there's something going on, that you need to go another way, that's all I have to go on. So I apologize, that's the way it happened. Would you agree, Mr. Lombard? Or Ms. Castillo? Were you led to believe?
Yes. However, I will say the group, when I arrived, was a little larger than just 4 or 5 people.
Okay.
From my understanding, because I did not remain downstairs, it grew to as big as potentially 30 people. By the time I came back down, it was significant enough for me to feel and find it necessary to report back to the community. And I didn't think that the number was big enough to have excluded them altogether. I didn't find them to be rambunctious or rowdy or I think they would have listened if they had been permitted to participate.
Okay. So, having explained all of that.
Chair,
Yeah, Albert.
may I? The way you say that we, a police officer, I feel, as a parent first, because I'm a parent before I leave there, I feel offended because it was not necessary to have police officer. I know the parent was there, they're very professional, and they know that because they care what's going on at our Bridgeport school and what's going on with the search of the superintendent. I don't feel that we had to avoid or to block or to not have the public be there in our meeting, because I know they care, they want to. If they was not care, they will not be there. But for me, as a parent and as a leader, as a board member, when I see that police officer, I feel very offended. I don't know why the reason was necessary, because they're acting, oh, we need to have a police officer because we don't know, because it's there or public or the people, they're dangerous. I really don't accept that, and I hope for the next time we don't have a police officer, because I know they very care, they're very professional, the public, the people was there, or whoever we have a next meeting to have a police officer. I feel like you feel that, I feel like they're gonna do something to us. I don't think so, they would not do something to us, because they care, they wanna be part of the public, they wanna be, and I always say, and remember, we are board members because we are elected from them. So us as I had to mandatory give an explanation to them. And Ms. Castillo, I really appreciate that you came downstairs and gave information to us, because Mr. Chair, you as the chair of the Board of Education, I feel now professional from you. Get out and go from the back from the building and not give face to our public. And I feel that offended. But Ms. Castillo, I really appreciate that, what you did. That's it, Mr. Chair.
So to answer your question or your remark about the police officer, I received emails that were very aggressive, that told me that, in no uncertain terms, they were going to come into the meeting room. When I receive borderline threatening communications, I need to make a decision. It's a judgment call. No one was going to, I didn't know what to expect. So that was the decision I made. It is what it is, and going forward, hopefully we don't have a circumstance like that again. Hang, I listened to all of you. I'm talking now. Mr. Sokolovic.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The chair is correct that the meeting is permitted to be done without public notice. What the chair fails to understand is that everybody sitting here understood that that was a possibility, but it is not a requirement. We sat up here and listened to a presentation from CAVE to keep the process open and transparent for as much as possible. This board understands that the community needs input. Our last superintendent process, it was mentioned before, we went into an executive session and we walked out with a superintendent. That contract said that we shouldn't hire that superintendent. Now, the superintendent, whether good, bad, you like him, you don't like him, was never able to overcome the perception that a backdoor deal was made. If we continue down this route of closing meetings, not allowing the public up into these meetings, we're going to burden the next superintendent with the same exact anchor around his neck, his or her neck. And that is totally unfair to the next superintendent, because the board process fails, that the superintendent is set up for failure. So we need to have an open, honest process for the public to look at, and we need to stop rushing. And I'll bring up a motion in a little while to separate this process, because this is not an emergency process. We got to hire an interim in 90 days. We can take our time with the permanent superintendent search and not have 3 superintendents in 1 year. Thank you.
Okay. So that's what.
Chair, please, before you keep going, go pick it back up on you said about security. That day we have around 3 or 4 school security in that school, including Mr. James Denton. And I believe if you think we received the email, we can have a one of security upstairs, and I know they're allowed to call 911 something happened. And I know, imagine it, we received, yes, parents, they were upset. Do you think are we okay what Mr. Testani did to us? Do you think I'm happy? You see my email, and I'm angry, because we trust Mr. Testani. We all trust him. Of course, we are not happy what he did, but we gotta keep forward. But we have between 3 or 4 school security that day for half our police officers. So, like I said, I feel offended for that and for my community. Thank you.
I understand. So to close this, tonight, we will publicly discuss these proposals that were reviewed and decide if we want to pick one of them. And that's later on the agenda. We're going to do that openly here in the public. Next up is ad hoc district-wide branding initiative. Ms. Brown?
We did not meet in the interim. Our next meeting will be next week. I believe it's the 17th. And there should be a notice that will go out to remind everyone, but I think it's 6:30 at Central High School Library.
Any referrals? Branding?
Yes, sorry. I had a referral about a possible discussion and possible action about digital wellness, a digital wellness campaign for our students. Thank you. I can email that to you also.
Okay. Contracts Committee, we met last night and on August 31st. One item passed through contracts, and that is the nutrition center bids. So we'll be taking that up later this evening. Another item that was discussed was the special education audit services contract. We met about that last night. It was placed on the agenda in the event it was passed out of committee, but it was not passed out of committee. So when that item comes up, we're going to dispense with that. We have some final tweaks to the contract, and hopefully we'll be able to meet in the coming week. Are there any referrals to contracts?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I apologize. I want to back up for a second. The Superintendent Search Committee, I got a referral for that. I would like us to look at City Ordinance Section 3.08070, the purchasing procedure. I believe that's imperative to look at, so we do not fall afoul of the requirement to get at least 3 bids for a contract over $1,000, because currently there's only 2 on the table. And for the Contracts Committee, I would like to have the committee review every personnel contract entered into for all positions above principal, beginning with the 21-22.
You have this written down?
I'm sorry?
You have this written down?
I can't hear you.
Read it, but I'm not writing that fast. So
Yeah.
you can read it and send it to me in an email.
Right, yes, I'll email you as well. I just want it on public record. Every contract entered into for positions above principal beginning in 21-22 school year to present. We have not approved any personnel contract terms nor salaries in recent memory. Our last hire, I have no idea how much they're making.
Okay. We'll look at that.
Okay.
Educational diversity, equity, and inclusion, Ms. Castillo.
We will be meeting on September 27th at, 1 second, I believe it's 5:00 p.m., 5:30 p.m.
Any referrals?
Yes, sir. I got another proposal. I'd like the committee to review staff demographics for the last 3 years with special attention paid to administrative staff in the same manner as prior years. If you want, I could send you the way the data was presented last time. And it should be placed side by side for, you remember how we got the data before, correct?
Yeah. And
So if we could just get it updated.
Sure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Facilities, are there any referrals? I have Albert's email. Anything else? Okay. Governance needs to meet to finalize the field trip policy. We'll try to get that done by the end of this month. Any referrals for governance?
Yes, Mr. Chair. We were meeting in students and families. I know that the district PAC bylaws have to be updated. I was suggesting that if possible, if we can bring back, to my knowledge, it was something previously done. If we can bring back where parent leaders or district PAC presidents can have either a seat or opportunity to present on how their schools are doing, just so that they have a voice, at the board meetings. And it doesn't have to be every month, it can be every
Quarterly.
Yeah.
Quarterly.
Just to increase parent involvement.
Yeah, it would be every meeting, like how the students participate. It would just be different schools featured each session.
Oh, every other.
Yeah, so, we wouldn't have all
cycle
30
through.
schools
Okay.
at the same time, but, on a rotation.
Okay.
1 or 2 or 3, however that divvies up.
Any referrals for personnel?
I got one for governance as well. I'd like to have a creation of policy, creating an exit strategy for superintendents going forward, because right now we have no exit strategy, and it should look at superintendents who has resigned from making major personnel decisions on their way out, including and not limited to promotions, hiring staff above the title of principal, because I believe that the next superintendent that should be starting in roughly 60 days, I know this process is not here, should own his own personnel and his own major decisions, and also possibly, yeah, I guess that's it. That's what's for governance. And I want to point out that we skipped finance.
Finance, Ms. Baptiste Perez.
Finance has not met in the interim. I'll be sending an email or text message out to the committee members to figure out a meeting schedule, hopefully closer towards the end of this month.
Okay, and referrals?
Yes, sir. I'd like to refer to the Finance Committee a review of all expenditures related to travel and professional development for the title of principal to superintendent. Included should be all costs and the purposes of each event of travel and approved travel expenses and costs associated with such trips for each personnel.
Okay. Students and families?
Student and family, we have it today at 5 o'clock, and it was amazing. You know, we appreciate Ms. Castillo and Ms. Brown and all the staff. You know, we did a good, and we will be keep forward and working together and trying to work with the budget to be sure the budget is spent for the parents correctly, especially educate our parents, not for those staff and not for the school, because I know they receive different budget. But this time, you know, we are going to be we are in the same page, and we're going to work in team. So my next meeting is going to be October 20, 2022 in Central High School in the library at 6 o'clock.
Okay, and referrals?
I don't know if this is considered a referral. I mentioned it in our meeting, just so something that we can tackle about, we have different schools. We possibly have neighboring schools to see if we can have either one representative. So for example, you have Barnum and you have, I always miss the name of the school, Waltersville. If Waltersville doesn't have a district, a leader, that maybe they can partner with Barnum to be able to create some type of leader. So I just want to announce it at the board and then refer it back to us again.
Yeah, I appreciate Ms. Brown. I know Mr. Plana, we were working together to have that leaders, you know, represent each school. Thank you.
Okay, teaching and learning, Ms. Baptiste Perez.
Similar to the Finance Committee, I'll be sending out correspondences for a meeting scheduled closer towards the end of this month.
Okay, referrals?
Yes, sir. I'd like to refer to the Teaching and Learning Committee the creation of a mandatory professional development centered around student gender identity and mandatory use of the student's preferred personal pronouns.
Okay. Superintendent's report?
Mr. Chair.
You do what?
Yes. I know everything went so fast, and I tried to write everything because I want to go about refer both financial, and I believe Ms. Bautista. And I already spoke, I don't know if you did it, but for the record, about Lighthouse update. I would like to know what's going on with the Lighthouse, what's going on. We never talk about the budget. We need to talk about how they spend the money. I know they use our schools.
Our budgets, city budget.
Okay, city budget, but I know they use our schools, right? They use our utility, they use our hot water, they use the light and everything. But anyway, I would like to have a update on Ms. Bautista, something, you know, you can receive so we can bring it to the committee. Thank you.
Okay. Superintendent's report?
Yes, just a couple of items. Number one, I'd just like to recognize Central High School, Harding High School, Bassick High School, and Bridgeport Military Academy for being recognized in the governor's FAFSA challenge for meeting their goals for FAFSA completion last school year. And a special shout out to Bassick, who one of the highest increases in the state of Connecticut, and also Bridgeport Military Academy. They will both be honored tomorrow at a luncheon with Governor Lamont and the Commissioner of Education, Charlene Russell Tucker. So great job by the staff at Bassick, Harding Central, and Bridgeport Military Academy for meeting their goal, and especially for Bassick and Bridgeport Military Academy for their school size being one of the highest increased rates in the state of Connecticut. So that was a major accomplishment. I wasn't going to speak on this at this meeting. We do have a preparation for the meeting on the 27th of all departments, including human resource, led by human resources in regards to staffing. But since it was mentioned tonight, We are 94.5% fully staffed. To Ms. Cheatham's point, there are slightly over 80 vacancies. Teachers do sign contracts. Unfortunately, they are not binding, so they are allowed to resign, just like any other job employee. They can leave at any time. Again, it doesn't make me feel any better to say that we are much lower in vacancies than our city counterparts in the state, who are upwards of 200 vacancies. We are looking, though, in areas where we can consolidate with data management by October 1st to combine classes that are under-enrolled, and we're currently working with the teachers union to reassign teachers to schools that have vacancies. It will not cover shortage areas that are nationwide, specifically in areas of math, science, special education. However, in the other areas where we can combine class sizes, we will ask first for volunteers of teachers to move to other schools. If that doesn't, we'll have to work closely with the collective bargaining unit to make sure that the processes in the collective bargaining unit agreement is followed. So that's where we're at. But at the 27th meeting, we will have all departments led by Human Resources to give an overview of the efforts that have been made to address the teacher shortage that is hitting not just Bridgeport, but it is a nationwide issue. Over 300,000 educators have left the profession in the last 2 years, and that number continues to grow exponentially each and every day. It's unfortunate by the location of the Bridgeport, city of Bridgeport, that we are at the tip of Lower Fairfield County, and we have 2 other major cities within 30 minutes that pay significantly more at the pay scale. I'm not going to point to any particular district in particular, but we have lost almost 70 teachers to one district because the pay scale is $15,000 to $20,000 more. We are bringing in teachers. Unfortunately, it's not a popular decision with current teachers, but we are bringing in teachers at much higher steps than we normally would to try to cut that pay increase. Unfortunately, though, we are at a significant disadvantage, and we continue to try to work with every college and university in the area. We've created cross-endorsement programs, fellowship programs, more, I guess, in more detail you will hear on the 27th. Part of the issue, just to give it a more context, there are less candidates graduating from teacher prep programs than openings in the state of Connecticut. So that is the biggest problem. There are not enough people leaving college prepared to teach, to become certified, than the number of openings that exist. In areas like speech language pathology, there is one program in the entire state of Connecticut. They only allow a small number of people to enter the program. The requirements to complete and become a certified speech language pathologist is not easy. They pump out 15 a year. There's 40 vacancies in a year. We have a nursing shortage as well. As you can imagine, healthcare providers are able to pay significantly more than a public school district to nurses, especially since the COVID pandemic. School psychologists. We also have some other contributing factors that those folks that head those departments will be more specific in, because it's not only about providing services to the Bridgeport Public Schools, 37 schools. We also have to cover parochial and charter schools that are within the city limits that we do not govern, but we are required by law to provide services to. So that just gives a brief overview. We do have a very detailed PowerPoint presentation, and the folks for the 27th, that was scheduled for the 12th. We decided, because of some of the more pressing business of the board, that we would leave that for the 27th. Thank you.
Questions? Baptiste Barrett?
I have a question. The all-department meeting, you stated that 94% of our schools is fully staffed. Are you defining fully staffed as 94% of our schools have teachers, or are you referring to other ancillary level staff? So
94% of our certified positions are filled with certified staff.
Oh.
So 6% of the
Certified teachers.
certified staff. That includes teachers, social workers, school counselors, speech. No, those are not certified. We have a number of vacancies as paraprofessionals. They're not certified. Certified staff are those members that are certified by the state of Connecticut through the teacher Department of Education. So we have a little over 1,500 full-time teachers. They may be split between buildings if it's a traveler. We have a little over 80 vacancies. So about 94.5%. Some schools have more vacancies than others. Some schools are fully staffed.
Do you know how many teachers are we short on?
So excluding the support staff folks, the school.
Full-time certified teachers, teachers that can lead the classroom.
Almost 80 vacancies.
There's 80 vacancies. Okay, so.
Take the substitute teachers out.
No, that includes the classes that are covered by substitutes. It's a vacancy if there's not a certified teacher in the classroom.
Okay.
Okay.
Do we have any particular schools or geographic areas that are significantly below?
Geographic areas, no. Schools, yes. Wilbur Cross is significantly more understaffed. As Ms. Cheatham had mentioned, but there's comparable schools that are on other sides of town that are fully staffed. So it's not specific to a geographic area. It's also specific to grade levels and certification areas, such as math, not as much, but science is a big area of shortage throughout the state. Math, science, special education. There are vacancies in other areas, but not as significant. There may be a handful, but those are the major drivers.
On the meeting at the 27th, will there be a breakdown for
each department?
Each department. So there'll be a breakdown presented regarding, and my concern is teachers. I guess first and foremost, teachers that are going to be able to lead the classroom.
I'm not quite understanding. Certified teachers by department. So Anna Sousa Martins will discuss any shortages in the ESL bilingual world language department. HR will be able to give you more specifics. Mr. Planis will probably speak to the math. Mr. Henry will speak to the science. HR will speak to elementary education, which is now being hit, which has never been an issue filling vacancies in elementary education. However, we have, as of today, 6 elementary classes that are uncovered. Again, those schools will receive a teacher in the next couple of weeks once we work with the union to consolidate classes. After we go through, data management provided me with a list of classes that are under enrolled that we can combine within schools. It's not ideal, but we're not going to have 2 classes in 3rd grade at one school with 12 with a sub at another school. So it'll go to 24 and we'll send a teacher over to the school so that those students have a certified teacher. The goal is to have a certified teacher. We hire year round. Unfortunately, people quit year round. It's a different climate and no one can explain it.
Okay. So we'll look forward to that presentation. Did you have another question?
Yes, we had somewhat of a major incident last week, and I believe it should have been part of the report. We had a pivot from full day to half day, back to full day again, and I had parents calling me that they had to pivot. They had to find a babysitter for the half day, and then they had to tell the babysitter they didn't need them after that, and then they had to call the babysitter back again because there was no lighthouse. Can we get some sort of rationale that went behind that decision-making?
I think it was pretty clear that the weather was extremely hot. We had classrooms that were over 95 degrees. 17 of our buildings do not have air conditioning. We had staff members that clocked in and sent pictures at 100 degrees in certain buildings. So we pivoted to a half-day schedule. The weather broke toward the end of the week, and we tried to give parents that we know had issues with childcare the opportunity to keep the kids in as much as possible. Why Lighthouse did not pivot back, I can't speak to Lighthouse. I don't run Lighthouse. I have no jurisdiction over the Lighthouse program. But they certainly could have offered Lighthouse on those 2 days.
Thank you.
If, Mr. Chair, if I can add, I'm very big on like the whole communication platform. Although there was adequate notice that I saw via Parent Square that went out in the future, just to avoid the back and forth, I think that maybe if a situation like that, and I know you won't be here, but whoever, we can bring this up for whomever the superintendent will be, that we keep it as is. I know that's days taken away from our students, but the frustration of the parents was out of control. And, I know I received phone calls. I bet some of the board members received phone calls, but I know that we don't want the students to be out of school, but that middle of the week transition threw a lot of people off. And I know, you figure like, we can get those days back or at least get them back into the building, but I think it caused a lot of chaos throughout the district. So, I know that's you guys trying to make the best decision to keep as many days as possible, but I think it was definitely alarming for those that received phone calls about it.
Mr. Chair, I have something to report to Mr. Tasani. May I? Thank you. Mr. Tasani, I know we go back and forth in the email, and I hope you can fix this situation what happened in Harding High School. Also, having a mom come talk about the cross school, having to say a student, her son or something, sit down in the floor. Can you please investigate that? At least she came here for the record. I know you don't like when I send you the email, but I'm sorry. When it's a parent situation and bring it to the board, I don't want to get it ignored. That's what they're here for. So us as a board member, we can fix it. Can you please, verify what the school, what happened? Also, I just want to let you know, my events on the September 3rd, we miss you that day. Parents trying to be there, but I really thankful Ms. Bautista, Mr. Joe, Ms. Brown to be in the event. I do in September 3rd in Cesar Batalla. It was amazing. It was very successful. When you say 94% certified staff, do you have, you can email us, what teacher exactly, who's certified, what position exactly? When you said in them before 94% certified staff, what kind of certificate, what kind of certified staff we have?
What do you mean? They're certified in the area and the content that they're
Yes,
teaching?
you said 94% certified staff, so I said who they are, exactly certified of what position? The title.
The ones you said before, the teachers.
Yeah, every teacher in the district outside of the subs are certified in the content and the grade level they're teaching. So Mr. Brown over there is certified in 7th, 12th math. He's a certified teacher.
Okay. And also, last time meeting, we talked about the fan for the classroom. Do you figure out if they have a budget, they can, in some school, like you said, it's 100 degree, 95 degree.
We provided fans as much as we possibly could, but we don't have enough fans for every classroom in the district.
No, I know, but I know some school, they have 100 degree, not because of weather's outside, but the classroom is terrible. It's very bad. All right,
Absolutely.
No more questions, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Next item is discussion and possible approval of class trips to Eastern States Exposition. Is there someone here to present on that? Bunch of you.
Good evening. My name is Liz Kranick. Sorry. I teach at the aquaculture school, And our intention is to take the students, as we have over the past 26 years, to represent our school and the agriculture department in the aquaculture divisions, so that they have the opportunity to use their expository skills and their networking, and the Connecticut building. So we've been invited to do that again this year, and we have that paperwork in place. We do realize that it was late, and we do apologize. The change in policy had kind of thrown us, but we are ready with the students and the chaperones and the staff to be able to carry this out.
Okay. You all can do this together. This is one item.
Well, we are two different trips.
So we're doing them together, though. So next.
Is it?
Good evening, board. Good evening, Superintendent Testani. Thanks for the shout out, by the way.
If you'd each state your names for the record so the stenographer can.
Oh, perfect. My name is Ryan Brown. I teach 7th grade math at Reed School.
My name is Kristen Lewis. I teach 8th grade language arts at Reed School.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Sahana Smith. I'm the principal at Reed School.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. So we're here to address the board. Essentially what the last speaker said about approving our trip to the Eastern States Exposition. First and foremost, it's an opportunity for our students that we've been lucky to have for over the past decade. I've been at Reed School, this is my 10th year, and then Ms. Lewis 9th, Ms. Smith 9th. And every single year we've been to the Eastern States Exposition. It's something that our students look forward to because it gives them the opportunity to learn outside of the classroom and outside of the confines of, regular rote learning and et cetera. They're able to take the skills that they learn in social studies about sources, primary, secondary sources, and apply that to the state houses and what they learn in there. They're able to learn about how to express, the things that happen in those state houses in New England, which is something that they learn in social studies and the standards, but also they're able to express themselves from the ELA perspective as well. We always have an assignment attached to the field trip that's educational based, but when students find out that when they get to 7th and 8th grade that they're able to take part of this trip, they really do look forward to it. And so there is a PBIS component that is attached to that, where they get really excited, they lock in, and they do what they need to do to earn the trip. And so that's pretty much why we're here to seek approval.
Anyone have any questions? You received extensive stuff.
Thank you so much for your dedication to the children at Reed School. I too was at Reed School once, and we took our children on different learning trips. And it was very exciting, and they learned a lot, and they were very, very happy, and the parents were also happy. And I think this is a wonderful thing that the children learn outside of the classroom, and there are other avenues that they can take to put all of this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Emma.
Mr. Chair.
Baptiste Perez.
There needs to be at least some kind of respect for order and procedure. Typically, these kinds of requests goes to teaching and learning, even when it is in an emergency rest situation. These trips didn't come, wasn't introduced, wasn't sent to me. Oh, there was no email, Ms. Baptiste Perez, can you hold an emergency meeting? And so I do find issue with trying to rush this. Also, I do take issue to the fact that these two trips for two separate schools for two separate purposes with two separate grade levels, two separate requirements are being merged into one on two separate dates, as a matter of fact. And therefore, I need to at least have a motion to bifurcate at this stage each separate school so we can discuss what's going to be learned on the high school level and what's going to be learned on the elementary school level, because there's two separate issues. Well, so, there's actually issues in both field trip checklists. I would want to address each one separately, because if we address them at all, it kind of takes it. one
So why
school will
don't-
suffer for the losses associated with another school, and they're two separate entities for two
So
different.
I would encourage you to make that motion.
I am making that motion. So I make a motion to bifurcate, split the decision to pass the field trip for Reed School to the Biggie or the Eastern States Exposition, and separate the decision for aquaculture's field trip to the Eastern States Exposition.
So moved.
She just
Second.
moved it.
Oh,
You
second.
seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. So since Aqua made its presentation first, why don't we discuss that? Are there any questions about the Aqua Culture School trip?
Yeah, just one question. It's probably being the same for both. Are the students going to be going on any rides?
I'm sorry?
Are the students going to be going on any rides?
We're encouraging them to stay with their chaperones, and the chaperones have been asked to keep them from the rides.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I would like to add to that. So they're being encouraged to keep them from the rides. What's to say that they were to get on the rides? Because that's, if they're going for educational purposes, is that included? That's kind of a concern.
It's an open area. Chaperones are in charge of each of the groups. We've discussed with the chaperones what we hope that they will be doing, which is to visit each one of the buildings that have agriculture, or FFA, which is the National Leadership Organization represented. And students have responsibilities to interview certain people and to answer certain questions, so that when they come back, they are better educated than during their shift, which is approximately an hour of the 3 hours that they're on campus, or 3.5 hours that they're on campus. They will be presenting in the Connecticut building to the visitors who come in. So they will be answering questions about the school and about the classes that they're taking and what they're learning and that type of thing.
And I don't want you to think that I don't want them to enjoy themselves. It just brings up a concern. It's like dangling an apple in front of the kids and then expecting. So I just want to make sure there is proper protocol, you know, that our students will be, not saying that the Biggie isn't safe by any means, but just that there is a plain direction as to what they're going to be doing the whole entire time.
I believe there has been each and every year an understanding and a set of instructions that are given to our chaperones and staff who walk around with the students, and we haven't had any difficulties.
Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
Recognize, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Baptiste Perez?
According to the Board of Education policies, the 6000 series 6201, section 1 of field trips, subsection E, trips to amusement parks and or water parks will not be approved. Therefore, I've told our chaperones to keep an eye on them, is completely against board policy. And when I initially read through this, the students are going to present, not get on rides. And I think that needs to be explicit. It is against our policy. It is not at this stage, especially since we're bypassing committee, which is part of the policy, that there needs to be a guarantee that chaperones will not permit under any circumstances any of our students, because that's going to create legal liability. And on too many occasions recently on social media, I've seen a young man fall to his death, and I've seen a ride completely collapse. So it's against our policy. We have to guarantee that our children are not going to get on rides, and we're not going to just make false assurances. Also, another thing when it comes to this, when field trips normally come to my committee, I get the permission slips. I look through the permission slips. On other occasions, I've seen permission slips not completely filled out, and I find that there's an issue in this stage that this is coming to our board last minute without the actual field trip permission slips. And it needs to be in the permission slip. And maybe this needs to go through the board's attorney, that the parent and the student understand it's against board policy, promise that they won't be able to get on rides and will not take any liability out against the district. Because I understand there's an educational component to the Biggie, there's a cultural of learning about New England, but there's rides, and we specifically have it in our policy. Now, if we want to change our policy, that's one thing, but that's not what's in front of us now. And also the fact that we don't have permission slips. Jesus, this mic doesn't like me. the fact that we don't have permission slips at this stage, I would need to see that before being persuaded that we can have our students. That's all for the entire first year I've been on the board. That's been standard protocol. I see the permission slips. I look through the permission slips. This parent didn't sign, that's an issue. We ask questions about insurance and liability, and the fact that there's amusement park rides creates that automatic liability. And so I need that to be clear and presented for the board for the schools, the district's protection, as well as the students.
So if my understanding you correctly, you would like to see the signed permission slips, not just the form that we use, but what the parents have sent back to us?
Yes, the signed permission slips, and taking a look at it, the signed permission slips didn't mention anything about not getting on rides. So you already have executed permission slips from parents, is what you're saying?
We do.
If you can provide the executed permission slips and send out maybe an additional notice to the parents and students that under no circumstances are students permitted to get on rides,
Yes,
I think that would be fair.
And to whom where would you like me to send the permission slips?
And typically, permission slips are sent to the superintendent's office and then he sends it back to committee. But in this stage, I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but I'm a lawyer, and that's what lawyers do sometimes. And I want to protect our students. If that's done in time, I don't see anything else preventing this trip.
Would you want the originals or would you accept faxed copies?
Fax copies works as well. Just want to make sure they're executed, and I just want to make sure additional notices given out, like absolutely no rides, because that's our policy. And so, and I don't want nobody getting.
Just have a copy ready. I'll swing by and pick it up in my travels. I have to go to Clater School.
They'll be ready in the office tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So are we saying that we're going to table this till this material is provided? And is this a similar set of circumstances with the other school? And can you clarify between the two of you, what are your respective dates?
September 23rd.
For who?
Aqua.
September 27th.
For Reed School.
Okay, so go ahead.
I just want to start by saying, we haven't finalized the field trip policy, as you mentioned prior. So this is right now under current policy, technically the proper venue to approve the field trips. Teaching and learning was what we had discussed in the policy that has not been fully approved yet. So I don't see why we can't approve these trips tonight and move forward. Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question actually, as an attorney. Is it proper to approve something contingent upon receipt?
That runs the risk that we don't receive it, and then
well, then it's not approved.
Then it's not approved.
Yeah, but then if the trip happens or there's an overlap.
What if it wasn't approved? It can't.
I mean, nothing necessarily stops us from holding another special meeting just to fly through, review the permission slips. Okay, here's the email blast. The notice was sent to all parents. It was received, and they're good to go. I mean, that's why I didn't make a motion to refer it to committee, because I don't want to delay it for our students, but I want our students to be safe. And so I could make a motion to table this for another special committee meeting, and we can set a scheduled date if that's effective to do here and now for the board. It sounds like, at least for Aqua School, sorry for paraphrasing, they can have that information in tomorrow. And so we can definitely, if they're able to have that information in, and at least send the blast, like an email blast to the parents and everybody who signed the permission slip along with a text message, no liability against school policy for anybody to get on rides, no rides. I think that's a way to expedite the process, but to be sure, according to the bylaws, Chairman Weldon can also consult with Birchman Moses to make sure that a blast or notice like that would be okay.
As far as like the technicality of it, because I didn't know that particular bylaw, is it that, because you read that it cannot go to an amusement park, but is it that cannot go on rides? Does it mention rides specifically?
No. And my only other
It
question,
specifically states amusement parks, amusement and or water parks will not be approved.
Right. But is there anything against going on rides? So in other words, this is not an amusement park or a water park. I'm just asking for the sake of getting it all out. So if they went to this exhibition, which a lot of us probably been to the Big E, and there are rides there, is it against our bylaws that they go on rides as well? Is that something that has to be specified?
You know, if it looks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, it's most likely going to be a duck.
I disagree. I think that is a specific bylaw for a specific reason. And, you know, if it is a problem with insurance liability, and that's spelled out specifically, regardless, kids can't go on rides, then absolutely, it's black and white. But I don't think it's a talking like a duck issue. I think it's actual real thing. This is something they've done for years. So and I'm wondering what's changed. Our bylaws have been there all along. You caught something specific to amusement parks, but does that preclude this? Is the bylaw cannot go on rides? And if that's the case, we have to address it. But if it's not, it's just there's rides there.
Well, I'll address this in 2 points. As far as the previous board, I believe there's been a relaxed approach to properly enforcing our bylaws. The ambiguity into it as to amusement and or water parks. Well, what is an amusement park? It's a park with rides, but the Big E is an exposition. So there is a learning component to it. Also, with what was presented from Aqua School in particular, is that they were going to present. So there is a clear and connected educational component to it.
That's right.
But however, the Big E is split. There's the education and there's the amusement park paid to get on this ride.
I agree.
And so I want to be very clear is that we're permitting them to go to the educational presentation component. But to draw out and to prevent any liability from the board, that gray area, I think we should address and just cross our T's.
So that's why I brought it up, because I think we should address it and maybe decide if it's not black and white, where does this board fall on this? You know, if it's not something that is prohibited, clearly, then I think as a board, we could address it. And I feel as though if they're going to have the educational component, they're going to do the presentation, is it a problem in the time that they have, the hours that they're there, that opportunity will be limited because they're going on the Ferris wheel? You know, but if it's not, I don't know that it is a problem, and maybe it is. That's why I'm bringing it up.
Well, the thing is that the content, our field trips are strictly linked to educational purposes and experiences. And so that's why I said for the time being, not to cancel because, or prevent this trip from going forward. This is something where we need to address in our policy. And the ambiguity and whether there were previous policies that were different and whether there were really more previous boards that were active or attuned to it. Like I said, I don't want to prevent it. I just want to make sure we protect ourselves and protect our students. And I think, when was this? The last time the Board of Education approved the bylaws for the field trip, well, actually Series 6000 in general, was March 9th, 2009. So
right, and she said this trip's been going on for 20-something years. So even before that bylaw, after that bylaw. So I just feel, I feel like it's really, all right. So if the trip were limited to the hours of presentation only, go there, come back, and don't walk around, enjoy the other aspects of the exhibition, like the fried dough, the fried Oreos, a ride. Like if that's not permitted, then that's not permitted. But I feel like that's all part of the incentive to do the work necessary to learn and present, because there's a little reward with it. And so that's where I'm coming from personally, but legally, that's a different story. It's why I deferred to you and you brought this up. But I feel like it's something that should be kind of spelled out, because to put the brakes on that, it should be because it should not be allowed. Like, it's different to say we're going on a field trip to an amusement park. That's why we're going. But if there are amusements at a park or an exhibition, to be prevented from using them because it just doesn't sit well, that's one thing. Or because it's legally inappropriate liability-wise, that's another thing. So I feel like, for me, if it's a liability issue that's not safe, then it needs to be spelled out. They cannot go on rides anywhere they go. So.
No, I agree. And to the extent, I think the purpose of the trip, I mean, had it said present, practice public speaking, experience New England's world's oldest roller coaster, maybe they could have probably got away with it. But just in the interim, I hear what you're saying. I think that's something fundamentally that should be addressed. And I don't know how it's been done in the past. But I think for the time being now, that's why also seeing the permission slips is key.
Okay.
Seeing the permission slips is, because you're on the committee with me. We've seen this before. I'll be like, so-and-so didn't sign the permission slip.
Okay, Ms. Castillo, she asked first, and then.
Okay, go ahead. If this policy has not yet been finalized and we're not yet operating under that, for this trip, can we still vote on it? Because I don't think it's fair that these students are essentially, I think it's a valid case. I think it's something that definitely requires more attention, but I think it's unfair that the students are not being permitted or that this process is delayed for them when they already have the intention of going on this trip, because the board hasn't done their due diligence in this very unique circumstance. And I do think that the board should still continue to pursue that and do the due diligence so that we have that policy going forward. But if they're still under the policy because the new policy that you read hasn't been implemented, then I think we can and should vote on it.
I'm reading the current policy.
That's the current policy. I think it all hinges on the question, why do we prohibit going to amusement parks? Ostensibly, it's because there are rides where somebody could get injured.
Or that
I think
is
more like
this
it's
a
an educational trip. Like,
Right.
if you're just
Well,
gonna go
there's that component too.
You're just going to go to Six Flags to go to Six Flags. That's not educational. But is it that liability issue?
And that's what I'm saying. That needs to be determined. But then when you have issues like this, where you might say it's a quasi amusement park because there is an amusement park element to it, but the whole thing isn't like that. If you're really just concerned about liability for going on a ride, let's say that and just agree to no rides. You can eat all the fried dough you want, but just no rides. Ms. Allen.
Well, I faced this when I was a teacher and a principal in school, Bridgeport schools. What I did is I had a company to insure all of the students that were going on the trip. They paid a small fee and they were insured and they were kind of safe. When I say kind of safe, I did all I could to supervise them. But I had a special company that insured all of my field trips. I even took my children on overnights to Washington, D.C., to all sorts of things. I took them to Florida, and I had insurance on every child. They paid a small fee in excess of the price that was paid. So I felt that insured and made the parents rest easy about the children going on the trips. They went to Disney World, they went to Agawam, Massachusetts, whatever the name of the thing was. And we had that kind of backup so that the school would not take the liability issue for these children.
Is the trip insured?
I honestly couldn't answer that. My director would know that better than I, but I don't remember any sort of paperwork like that in the past 25 years.
Well, I've
so.
been gone 100 years, so.
No, but it's common that, you know,
Yeah.
that trips are insured, and I don't
Yeah.
see paperwork.
Albert.
Thank you. I have a question for you guys. They say they have 11 chaperone. Are they all parents?
I'm not sure you're referring to my trip. My trip has,
No, you're looking at the wrong trip, Albert.
my trip has 40 students, and there are 4
Talking
chaperones.
about the one that September 27.
For chaperone.
Mr. Bennett, we're looking at September 23rd.
10%.
Okay. No, but I see the second one, but I'm talking about the September 27. I see it's 11 chaperones, so I just want to know they are.
Point of order, Mr. Benham, you're looking at Reed School's trip to the Big E. Currently, we have Aqua School in front of the board, present on their school. So there's about, you said it, 40?
There are 40 students. The plan is for 3 staff members to be on site and 3 parent chaperones.
That's why you have the insurance. The children pay an insurance with their fees that they pay, and they're covered by an outside insurer.
I got it now.
Ms. Baptiste?
We've had similar field trips in the past with other schools where we've asked for insurance, we've checked their COVID compliance. I think just because of the timing of this field trip that's in a few days, whether it's realistic to go through insurance shopping, requesting additional fees on top of the parents, that may actually create some type of a burden on our families. And so,
Go ahead. And I agree, that's what I was trying to say. If it's a liability thing, then we don't want to, you know, it's being caught now, that's good to catch it now. But I feel like if there is no insurance, that's a problem.
yeah, no, there's no insurance.
Yeah.
I looked through the whole packet like I normally do. And so I think at this time, I'll introduce a motion to table this item for aquaculture's field trip to, get the exact name, the Eastern States Exposition. Is anybody available Monday for a special meeting? So
You can do it virtual.
a virtual meeting.
If that's all we're
Field-
talking about.
Right now,
And all
only
the ducks
regarding
are in a
field.
row.
What are we looking for
That's what-
before
And let's
Monday?
clarify what it is that we'd be seeking.
I think.
Because there's been a lot of back and forth. So you
We're
want
going to
you
be
want see
seeking a
permission
review of the
slips?
permission slips.
You want it explicitly stated
wanna-
that rides are not allowed?
Yes, an explicit statement that rides are not permitted. And we can state according to board policy 60, no, phone cut off. According to board policy 6201. And yeah, I think once we see the permission slips and once we've at least covered our end with making sure that there's no rides, that will be permissible. I think a last little caveat is this probably would have been, we're about 2 weeks into the school year, so anytime something like this comes in, feel free to reach out to Teaching and Learning, because probably discuss this a lot quicker in committee instead of running it through a board meeting.
This was submitted rather late, and I think that's part of the problem.
But we're also fixing the dates in the revised policy.
School started on the 29th, and I'm sure they didn't distribute field trip permission slips the first day of school.
No.
That would have been fun.
And then on top of that, this is a Thursday meeting that unfortunately we didn't meet on Monday. But if we're going to ask all permission slips now be part of the field trip packet, then something new too. We're kind of pivoting and changing things because that is not part of the field trip packet. So now we'll have to revise the field trip packet to include copies of all permission slips signed. Not as if it's not like we're going to be able to verify signatures, but all right. My other
So-
question will be then, they're going to sign that they're not going to go on rides. If a 15-year-old decides to say, I'm going to go to the bathroom.
What's the consequence?
And then runs to get on a ride, like, what do you want to do now? Do you want to suspend him from school because a 15-year-old wanted to go on a ride? I mean,
I just don't
we
want him to
talk a
be the
lot at this
15-year-old
board,
that dies
at board
on a
meetings
ride.
and committee meetings about giving our kids opportunities. This would not be a discussion in neighboring towns. They take kids to Disney for band trips and the kids get to go to Disney and enjoy themselves. That field trip policy, I remember when it was changed, it had nothing to do with liability. It had to do with education. I don't see how we take kids to the Westchester Knicks game and that's educational. It's fun. Kids need to have some fun. We're post-COVID and now we're nitpicking on if they go on a ride after they may not want to go to this trip. Let's have some fun. A little bit of fun is not a bad thing.
Mr.
They're going to sue the district regardless if something happens. If they go and choke on a frozen, what'd you say, a fried Oreo?
Fried Oreos.
Yeah, I've never had one, thank you, but.
Mr. Testani, point of order, as a board member speaking. The purpose of the trip is to represent the BRAS-TEC at a booth in a Connecticut building, represent aquaculture to visitors, practice public speaking, network with other New England FFA chapters.
Correct.
If we want to change the policy, that's one thing. The biggie is fun just eating every food in every house.
I don't know, though. It doesn't
But,
say that they're going there to
however-
eat. They're saying we might have to send them with a bag lunch because it says they're going there for that purpose. It didn't say they could enjoy the food, but it's kind of an unwritten rule. They're going to enjoy the food.
The fact is that there's policies and rules. And when we had situations where children were supposed to go on a trip across seas, failure to follow the procedure and rules had an impact.
Correct.
And so we have policies and rules, whether they're outdated, ineffective, ambiguous. It is our job as a board to not only protect our students, but our number one goal should be education.
Correct.
Education.
I'm not disputing that. I'm
And
just
so if
saying
we're going
it
to
says
have a trip,
no amusement parks. To Mr. Lombard's point, it doesn't say no rides. So if we want to be technical, they can go somewhere and sneak on a ride and have a little fun. The whole purpose is not to go to an amusement park without an educational component. The whole purpose is not to take them to a water park without an educational component. This is supplemental to the educational component of it.
I
So
think
they're going, they're going to do what they need to do in terms of presenting, visiting the houses of the states, and then they're going to try not to get them on a ride. I mean, we got to trust the chaperones to do their jobs as well.
Okay, Mr. Kolovic has hand up.
Yeah, I didn't expect to have myself in this much turmoil until a couple of items after this, but I'm sitting here thinking, on the one hand, we do have a policy in place that we're in the midst of changing. Some of us don't even, I would prefer to have no amusement park policy restriction in it just because the kids aren't having fun. And our kids, we just went through 2 years of COVID and bottled up and a lot of stresses on our children. But then again, there's the liability issue. Is there some way we construct a simple 1-paragraph waiver of liability for going on this field trip and just put somewhere, just to protect the district and still allow the students to go?
I could ask Floyd Dugas tomorrow if there's something that he can suggest that we can give to the families to sign. Something did click. Permission slips will not be provided to the board because there is confidential information on those permission slips that should not be privy to anyone outside of
Permission slips have been provided in the past meeting, so for all of a sudden there be an issue with permission slips. The failure to execute permission slips have been an issue in the past, and yet now you're going to mention that there's going to be an ambiguous waiver of liability, and we won't get the ability to look at it, but yet each name of each child, their address, their phone numbers, their parents' contact information has already been provided to us. There is subsequently
There
no
could be
difference.
medical.
Point of order, I'm a board member. You're technically,
to you.
point of
responding to
order,
you.
I'm not done speaking.
Okay, ma'am. Not speak, done.
I move that we call the question.
Nobody seconded the original motion.
No,
You're okay, guys. Okay,
this,
you made
you
a
know,
motion to table this.
there's a motion on the table.
I don't recall anyone seconding it.
Okay.
Did anyone second it? I don't think it was. Does anyone want to second it? Ms. Castillo seconds it. So the motion is to table this item to a special meeting to allow proper information to be provided indicating that rides will not be allowed. Is that right?
No, there's a motion.
He's telling you he can't give you permission slips.
Well, then he's
If there-
failed
if
during his
there's no
time as
medical
a
information,
superintendent, as
if there's no
supervisor of the
medical
teacher and learning committee to do his job.
Okay.
And then that's a blatant example of why this is probably a benefit to the district. If all of a sudden you want to change the policy within your last 90 days here,
Okay.
that's how it's been done. That's how we've ensured compliance. That's how we've ensured the information. And then to come up with a bogus example of because of confidentiality, when we have the confidential information already in front of us in our packet, I find it's absolutely ludicrous and disrespectful. The motion in front of us is to table this till next week with permission slips so we can ensure it's been executed. In addition to the permission slips, notice regarding a no rides. That motion can go forward, and if someone wants to amend it to say a waiver of liability, that's the proper way to do it in Robert's rules. And so that's the
Anyone?
clarification.
If that's acceptable, then I would amend it for a waiver of liability.
Okay, well, first, the motion in front of the table is a motion to table it to next week, Monday, for a special meeting with no rides. If that's what Ms. Castillo wants to second, she can second it now.
That's what
That's what she did. That's what
That's what
she
I did
seconded.
second.
Okay,
And
now
Mr.
there
and
needs to be
a
a motion
oh.
to amend.
You want to make a motion to amend?
I did already.
He did.
I'll
Is there a
second
second to
I'll
that?
second the motion to amend.
All in favor of the
Wait,
amendment?
clarify what the motion to amend is.
Motion to amend was to, in lieu of a notice saying there will be no rides, to put out a waiver of liability statement, whatever that.
Well, we have to see if it's feasible in time. For Monday.
I don't think you can get away with waiving or having a waiver, because if you take somebody's child on a ride out of the city, out of the state, and they get hurt, you better have an insurance policy on them so that if they do, the Board of Education may not be able to stand all of the liability that's there. And we may, it's just a 6 in one hand, half a dozen in the other. But I think if they want to go and want to go badly enough, that they will pay the insurance fees included in whatever is being charged for the whatever.
So if you don't mind, it sounds like there's an amendment to the amendment.
Okay, well, can we get past the First Amendment?
No,
You
Robert's
seconded the
rules.
First Amendment.
No, but
correct?
according to Robert's rule, we can have amendments to amendments.
I understand that, but first you need to pass the original amendment.
No, you don't.
All right, so what's the Third Amendment to further confuse the stenographer?
The one that I just said.
So you want to amend it that they purchase liability insurance?
That's correct.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second it, but I'll have a question. Is that in lieu of?
In lieu of hold harmless or a waiver of liability. That's what she's saying.
So rather than a waiver of liability, we'll have insurance.
Can't hear you, Joe.
I apologize, thanks, Mike. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, could you just clarify the?
Ms. Allen is amending the amendment that students purchase liability insurance.
Okay, and
right?
That's correct.
And the permission slip falls to the floor? Or is it both?
Yeah, that's a done deal. That's not being touched.
Yeah, I think I can live with that.
So would this be an option? The parents can decide,
Yeah.
you know, and then if they, you know, either my kids can't go on a ride, or I purchase the insurance and they can go on a ride?
That's correct.
Will they be given that option?
I'm trying to keep it as bright line as possible.
Yeah, this is getting really muddy, really fast. And these guys only have a week.
Well, they don't. If you're having a meeting,
And
you're
even
meeting
less.
on Monday, tomorrow's Friday. So if we don't get this done tomorrow, there's no trip.
I'm not sure if there's a way to like call, I don't know.
And I'd rather have no trip than to
I don't
have
know
the
where
liability
I don't know where you would find insurance at this point.
Yeah.
You gotta shop
And
that
its
around.
members.
So,
See, because we become liable,
Mr. Chair,
students, if we
I'm
have
gonna withdraw
no.
my second.
Okay. He withdrew the second, so now we're back to the first amendment,
okay,
which
Albert's
is,
got something to say.
Mr. Chair, I have my hands up and I don't know, everybody talking like crazy, we're not recognized, but thank you for recognizing me. I feel sad and mad that the students don't have a trip the way it is supposed to be. They deserve it. It is impossible they have another form say, parents sign, say, I love my kid, you know, be in the trip, be on the ride or eat something, because, come on, as a board member, we're gonna have,
Just so you know, that's that second amendment. That's that amendment.
can I finish, please? I didn't interrupt no one of you, please. And I respect everything you say, guys, but so please respect when I'm speaking, please, thank you. And to be clear, it will much better have another form, say, I, as a parent, you know, who I let my son be in the ride, I let my son be in, eat something, so we don't have problem, like you were saying, we don't get sued, nothing like that. We don't want that. Of course, we don't want that. Every time we get sued, that's our kids' money. So I just prefer to have something like that and we didn't keep forward because this go back and forth. You know, look what time is it, parents have to go home, stuff like that, and you know.
So Mr. Benahan, that's the amendment that's on the floor right now.
Yeah, but we look like we go back and forth. He says, she says, he say, we could go back and forth. Let's do something, period, you know,
I just want to make sure,
something
because
clear.
it did get foggy and confusing, so that's the current one. So right now, what you just said is related to that amendment. So
I know, Mr. Lombard, but you know, someone say something different, the other one understand another way. So they say everybody be in the same page and we keep forward because this is for our students, not for us. The student received all these staff working very hard to be sure a student have this trip. That's all. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
recognize. Who would be responsible for drafting such a statement?
We'd have to have the board attorney draft something because I don't feel as if we're in a position to do that ourselves. The liability waiver that was presented in the spring when the international trip was trying to be shifted, when it was presented to our board attorney, he was not willing to, and that was provided by the tour company, and it was just a generic, he was not willing to give a stamp of approval, given the language of the waiver. So I can reach out to him tomorrow. Hopefully he's in the office. I don't know what his schedule is. You know, I'm sure he is, but we got to get this back, you're saying by Monday for a special meeting. And
they all have to sign?
and it has to be, well, obviously it has to be distributed and then signed by the parent to be returned back prior to the meeting.
Could it be special meeting Tuesday, maybe? I mean, give another day to get it done? Does it have to be Monday? If that makes a difference.
So
I
you're
would-
amending.
No, I'm just asking.
No, we're just talking at this point.
Right. I think just as long as it's drafted and part of the packet that the students are going, we could approve it in lieu of, rather than waiting for 24 students to get it back or 40 students to get it back, and just have them, just like make part of the motion, they can't get on the bus unless they have signed
I just have a question. In the past, since you've been going for 20 some odd years, what has been the recent experience of children getting on rides?
The chaperones are asked that they not. We give them assignments that keep them away from that area.
Okay.
But sometimes they will go and play the games, which are next to the rides.
Okay.
And in all honesty, unless the adults are lying to me, they have told me that they have not allowed the children to get on the rides.
Okay.
So
I believe the parents pay for this trip, right? Parents, they really pay.
This is not paid for, no. This is paid for by the FFA organization in our school and by the state FFA organization. So the children don't have to put out any money for this at all. This is one of the reasons that it is such an adventure for them, because there is no monetary, there's just the investment of their time and their best behavior and their best speaking skills.
Thank you. I thank you for information. Mr. Chair, you see, this is information that she's given to us. The next time they will not support them because they think our board we're not in the same page. So that's only that I can say.
So all in favor of the amendment?
Can you restate?
Yeah.
The amendment is for a special
Can I
meeting.
withdraw my amendment?
I also would like to withdraw my second.
Okay, so we're back to the original.
So, yeah.
Because I don't want it to be on Monday. I think it should be on Tuesday.
Then that's an
Okay,
amendment.
we don't need a motion to schedule the meeting. Just tell me, based on when we get this information, we'll just schedule it.
Okay.
So I don't think we need to get hung up on that.
Okay.
The main thing is, do you know what it is you want to see that night?
Yeah.
Okay, so I will keep my second, and then you can,
Which was to receive the signed, copies of the signed permission slips, receive them, and
Notice of no
a notice
rides.
that goes out saying absolutely no rides.
right.
Okay, right. Are we good with that?
Okay, so we're not looking for any waivers. We're just looking for a signature from a parent that on a notification that absolutely no rides will be allowed, and they're agreeing to that. Okay.
Right.
Do you want the student signature as well? So they understand it?
Because they're under the age of 18, so
I
it wouldn't
said
be
as
legally.
well.
As an acknowledgement that they understand. Right. That's what he's saying.
Sure.
Sure, it's not binding.
She has a question.
Who?
Could just ask, I want to make sure that I'm getting the right information to you. So for the meeting that needs to be held next week, you would like to have the copy of the permission slip forms signed by the parents, and you would like to have some form indicating that they have signed that their children will not go on rides. By that point?
Yeah, I'll work with Mr. Henry tomorrow on
Thank you.
getting that all together so it's not on your plate.
Are we applying this to the other trip as well?
Let's wait.
So we don't.
Let's look at that.
Ms. Smith, you're here, so I can work with you tomorrow as well on this.
Okay.
We have to vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the sooner you get that information and I'm aware of it, I will schedule that special meeting for Monday or Tuesday.
And I would just like to make a comment about this whole discussion. I feel like your presentation was put out in a way as the intention, the goal is for no rides. But in fact, the way you explained it now, it's pretty clear they don't go on rides. So I kind of feel like the discussion didn't even necessarily have to go as far as it went if it was that strong, that, no, they don't go. And so I said already that, and I think Mr. Benahan alluded to it, something pleasurable, something fun. And if it is or was, but no more, the kind of thing where that was part of it, that's just not the part of it anymore. Unless we change something on our side, you know, but it's just that it's really clear. It's just for the educational purpose and enjoying being there. And I want to just repeat what with Ms. Brown said. I think you said holding an apple in front of them. Is that what you said?
Dangling an apple.
Dangling an apple. That's just something to consider for the future, for us as the board and for the schools planning trips where they are in places where there are dangling apples. like really fun things to do when you're 15. So it's just something that we all have to consider. You don't want to put the kids through that tension, so, and the chaperones and the parents and the board and everyone else. So I think that this conversation probably maybe was years in the making and it just surfaced up today, based upon the way this all played out. So I want to share that with you and thank you.
We appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your time. Okay. Discussion, possible establishment. Okay. Go ahead.
Brian, when's your date? The 27th?
Yeah, September 27th.
The following week then, okay.
Is everything the same with this one?
Yeah, are we going through the same?
We have other things.
I just wanted to make a quick comment. I'm not sure about like the packet. He had mentioned something in the last one about 11 chaperones. We updated the packet because the packet that I was using prior was a field trip packet that I had. I didn't know that they had updated to like an editable form. And so I put all the chaperones we have up there, which is about 14. So we did update the packet and we did match the 1 to 10 student to or teacher chaperone to student ratio. And everybody listed on that packet, with the exception of 2 parents, are certified staff members. So I just wanted to make that comment.
Okay. Are there any more questions? This is a similar set of circumstances. Do we need permission slips from these folks? The no ride statement?
Yes, but also just clarify your complete list, because even with 14 chaperones, when I did a count of the number of students attending, I had 154 to 11,
That
which
should
wasn't
be
in compliance.
132.
132. Well, then it was a lot easier with Aqua. They had numbered it for me. I numbered it. I went through it. I got a count of 154.
So, and that's part of the discrepancy, because what I was told was to redo the whole packet, so I did, and there was 132 students on the new packet. The old packet that I sent you was based off of roster lists that were from the beginning of the year. Okay. But since then, there has been some, movements and stuff like that. So the updated list that everyone should have is 132 students, 14 chaperones.
I don't believe the board was provided with the most accurate packet, because we have.
And then I'm sorry for interrupting you too. I just didn't want there to be any discrepancy, because, and we do have that other packet as well. Yeah, Rita Valley has it.
Yeah, no, because my concern was we have 154 students, but the buses can only seat 132.
Yeah, and
so I was like, we got a math problem going on.
Yeah, no,
You're a math teacher.
Yes. So like, if we send you the updated packet, the students, chaperones, buses, all should be aligned.
Okay, well then if that's the case, then everything we've said before is pretty much applicable and there's no different issue.
Okay, perfect.
So we'll include them in this next special meeting, provide comparable information that Aqua is going to do. We'll move on.
And then, so that would be by next Monday.
Monday or Tuesday. I mean, if you can get it, tomorrow, the sooner the better.
Okay.
And the sooner we can plan the meeting.
And then one last thing I wanted to mention, or 2 last things I wanted to mention. The first thing was the 132 students listed. There was a mention of like us not knowing if the students, like which students are going to go, which students are not going to go, beginning of the year trip. And so that's why I included all of the 132 students, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they're all going to go. And so when we give you the updated list, the number will most definitely change.
As long as we reach the proportion and we're able to bus them according to as long as we reach the board policy we have is, I think it's one chaperone to every 10 students. As long as we're in that ratio, that's completely fine.
Okay.
And my concern is we got more kids than we got space on the bus.
Yeah.
So as long as we
That'll be changed.
Take them, that's it.
And then the second thing is that we're very clear about no rides. And that's something that we discussed with them. We put them all together in the cafeteria. We let them know, like, we're not going on rides. We're going to make sure you're not even in that part. And that's part of the reason why we labeled it Eastern States Exposition, because we're very clear that that's the part that we want to go to. That being said, though, in the future, we will make sure that it is stated explicitly for parents as well, because we tell the students that, and then they listen. But you guys were absolutely right that the parents should be looped into that aspect as well, so then they could also say at home, hey, don't go on those rides. We want to make sure you go on more trips for the year. And so I just want to, like, we appreciate the discussion about the rides, and I know that's not the main purpose of both of our trips at all. We're not going there just to go on the rides at all, or go on the rides at all. We're trying to learn. We're trying to give our students another opportunity to do that outside of the classroom. But we appreciate the dialogue, because it'll make us, frame this better in the future, so that the discussion isn't as long and we don't have to put you all through this all over again. So just want to say thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.
And so with those, the two things, and the permission slips and the statement signed by the parents saying absolutely no rides, which we're going to draft.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
By Monday.
Or, yeah.
The sooner the better, because I need to schedule the meeting for Monday or Tuesday.
Okay.
So the sooner the better.
So
Okay.
shouldn't
Mr.
we
Chair,
just have a
second.
formal motion?
Yeah.
That way it's on the table?
We separated them, so we have to.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
So I'll seek a motion, repeat of the prior motion for aquaculture applicable to Reed School.
So
Second.
So moving second.
Moved by Ms. Baptiste Perez, second by Ms. Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Be in
you.
touch. Discussion and possible establishment of Health and Safety Committee. This was an item that Ms. Baptiste Perez asked to be on the agenda at the last meeting.
Yeah. And so I think it's important, although we're moving past COVID, and that's been a statement that's been said numerous times throughout meetings. Just an update on the state of our students is something that health, and that includes mental health, is something I think is extremely important. We're moving past COVID, but what's being implemented in our schools? Are we still doing COVID testing? Are teachers still calling out? How is that impacting our school day? The same thing for our students. I think moving past COVID, we can't ignore the fact that it's still around, maybe not as deadly. But there's also other health issues and other health crises that's occurring in our city. The recent news article today about Bridgeport having the largest amount of young Black men killed by gun violence. Mr. Testani had mentioned that the city has a health committee, but yet we don't receive any reports on how it impacts our board, or how it impacts our students and how it impacts our schools. And there's another state of emergency. I am not sure, and maybe it's helpful to have a committee and someone report that to us about monkeypox. What's the status with the flu season? This committee does not have to meet every month. It could be a quarterly meeting, but just the state of our students. I think Mr. Testani had emphasized the fact that we were able to get 10 additional social workers for our kids to deal with the social and emotional issues associated with COVID. And clearly there's been substantial learning loss nationwide. And it's definitely hit our students with the recent test scores. We're only about 20% of our students pass the SBAC on a proficient level. And so the creation of this committee can be quarterly, just to kind of get a state of the health in the city, the health in our schools, and just ensure that we have policies that's not going to create any further disruption, and maybe hear from the teachers union as to teachers' opinions, because I've heard and seen in other boards, if there's an outbreak of COVID, they'll switch their Meet the Teachers night to a virtual event. And so I just want something that's going to streamline, keep an eye out on the obvious issues that we have with mental health and health in the community, and maybe have a quarterly committee, if not a monthly committee, because these issues are real, and the impact of social emotional trauma, I've heard from psychiatrists, is generational, and it can be stigmatizing. So it is multi-levels, not just traditional health, but includes mental health, and we can kind of keep an eye on how it's impacting our schools.
Okay. So do you want to make a motion?
So I make a motion for the creation of a health, at this time, I'll leave it up in the air for quarterly, so I'm just going to make a motion for the establishment of a health and safety committee for the Board of Education.
Second.
Second by Ms. Brown. Typically, the committee itself decides what its schedule is going to be. So amongst themselves, that's that. Is there any further discussion or questions?
Yes. I think this is so important. One of the things that has been that I've thought about the last 3.5 years is that it seems that most of the students that are getting these types of services are really identified needs students. And I think this applies to all students going through their changing in life, and they're growing up, and emotional and social, and of course physical health as well. So I don't know if you had heard of these types of committees and other boards, but yeah, so I think this is a really good thing. And so just wanted to say that.
Yeah.
Mr. Skolowicz?
Yeah, I do think this is a great idea. I have one concern, however. This will be our 11th committee, and I think we should look at consolidating some committees into.
We could start talking about that.
In order to.
Yeah, I was wondering if this is under like students and family, or like, because it's a student thing, you know.
The safety committee used to be under facilities. These facilities used to be for safety and security as well. Because if we could look at it like safety, health of our facilities, it could be integrated and just have a standing agenda item related to health. I don't know what the feeling about that is. I'm just concerned with 11 committees and 9 board members might stretch some people too thin. Or we could consolidate other committees into each other.
I think if you establish it and they can kind of start formulating what they're doing, then they can start seeing if they are like overlapping with somebody else. But to try at this point to fit it under some other function when it hasn't even gotten off the ground is not. I mean, I think they would need to decide what is it that they're going to look at. Are you going to look at, experience modification ratios? You're going to look at slip and falls? You're going to look at how far you're going to take it. So.
Makes sense.
Go ahead.
Also, I do want to point out that there are 2 ad hoc committees on, so those eventually have to come to an end. Right. So although at this time it does seem like a lot, I mean, the purpose of the district-wide branded initiative, as well as for the calendar committee, those are, to a sense, ad hoc, temporary. It's not going to be there. So I think at this time, I mean, but health issues are, I don't want another pandemic happening ever again, but I think it's a little bit different, and there is some wiggle room to the fact that there's 2 ad hoc committees.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
So, is there anyone who's particularly interested in being on or chairing this committee?
I'll be interested in being on. I'm interested in being on the committee.
Are you interested in chairing it or just being on it?
At this time, teaching and learning, teaching and learning, finance. I'm the liaison for Achievement First and for Capital Prep. So I have four committees.
You don't have bandwidth for that.
I don't think I have the bandwidth to take on another one.
Anybody else want to be on this?
I'm interested, but it would only be based off the schedule.
Okay.
Okay. I'm interested in being on it, but not chairing it either. So I don't have the vision for chairing it.
All right.
Don't look at me, I'm not going to take
Oh, Jesus.
All right, well, we'll refine this discussion further. We'll refine this discussion further.
We just have to vote,
But we'll
right?
just I'm just putting it out there. So all in favor of the committee?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll work the rest out later. Well, let's try to button this up. Okay, acceptance of school construction projects, 3 of which. Schilling. For anyone who isn't familiar, Mr. Schilling works for the City of Bridgeport Schools Construction Office. The way this works is the city pays for construction projects, but then we have to accept them as being complete for.
With your acceptance, then we can financially close them out with the state.
Yes.
State holds 5% back on progress payments.
So they're pretty basic. I mean, they replaced the roof at Lewis Munoz Marin. They conducted some alterations at Black Rock and some alterations at Columbus. Does anyone have any questions on any of these projects?
I just have a question about how these projects come in order of like priority, as far as I understand the roofing needing to be done at a school, but a lot of our schools are old. So I'm just curious, how does?
Yeah, can you explain how it is determined what schools get whatever kind of work done to them? How is that prioritized? Or is that?
Yeah, what's more of our, part of our facilities submission capital plan every year. So we submit projects and through our facilities department, and through those projects, they're prioritized based on need. Not all of them may get through in a particular year, but then those get teed up for the following year. So we do ask for extensive work to be done to our facilities through capital money every year. And the city then will negotiate what's really a priority and pressing and what can wait until the next year. So these were projects that have been completed.
Yeah, you put it on your capital budget list that goes to the city.
They fund it.
Proof.
Right.
The Columbus and what was the other? Black Rock are quite old, these projects.
Yeah, Columbus goes back years. That project, we ran into PCBs, which with an elementary school, EPA standards for what's acceptable is very, very low. In Central, you had issues there, but for teenagers, the levels that you can get to are much higher, actually are higher than for adults. And so with Columbus, particularly with the preschool, the 4-year-olds, standards, there was one room, we had to rip it apart 3 times.
Okay.
Get it to level that it would pass.
Understood.
The only recent project was the Marin roof done last year. So
okay, so all these projects have been completed.
Yes.
Certified as completed by the engineering firms.
Yep.
So.
Get some kind of like TCO,
A what?
like certificate of completion, or like the roof project. Do you receive anything like that?
I mean, the engineer certifies it as being completed and up to specification.
Wait, are these projects done?
Yes.
Or,
These are
okay.
complete.
They're done.
These are completely done.
These are
So-
completely done.
We're just looking to submit to close them out so the state
On budget.
Yeah.
so the state releases the 5% hold back to the city.
Jeez.
That's all
Thank you. I
it
thought
is.
these were upcoming. Oh, that's fine. That's easy.
So is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
1, 2, 3. Second by Ms. Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Larry.
Okay, item D, as mentioned previously, we're going to skip over that because it never made it out of committee. Discussion possible approval to award Food Nutrition Center bids for food, paper, and cleaning supplies. This is
Mr. Garrity's here
Garrity.
representing.
Hi, good evening, board members, superintendent, Mr. Chair.
I'll make it quick.
Excuse me?
I'm going to make this quick because I think we're all baiting. At the last committee meeting, the only thing that was discussed is that all of these bids are the low bids. You're not making any award for anything that is other than the low bid.
That's correct.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions? Go ahead. That's what I just asked him. I only want to know if you're not awarding to the low bidder.
Can't hear you, Joe.
Okay.
I asked
He
a stupid
withdrew his
question.
question. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the award of the Food Nutrition Center bids for food, paper, cleaning? Moved by Mr. Benahan, second by Ms. Brown. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, John.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
John, congratulations again on your retirement.
Yeah, and I'll note for the record, after 42 years, 1976.
Wow.
Yes.
46 years.
46.
What happened?
46 years? 46.
He's retiring.
He's
Or
retiring.
semi-retired. He's
Semi-
here.
Yeah,
Still
he's
here now.
Okay.
And he stayed all the way through the meeting.
Retiring
Thank
after
you.
serving the district
I'm
since
retiring right now.
1976.
All right. Next item is discussion possible selection of superintendent's search consultant.
All right.
As previously explained, we received proposals from the only two search firms in the state of Connecticut. We met last week to look at them and to talk possibly with the proposers, with any questions we had. We talked with CES, we had questions about. Both proposals are comparable in price. They both are less than $20,000, and they're actually within roughly 10% of one another. So is there anyone interested in advancing one firm or the other for consideration to select?
Mr. Chair, before we move on to that, I think we should separate the question between the temporary superintendent and the permanent superintendent, because we could take two different tracks on both of them. I have a motion prepared.
No, I explain that again?
Yeah, I have a motion. If I could just make the motion.
No, if you could tell me what you want to try to do.
I want to separate the question.
What question?
For the interim superintendent and the permanent superintendent.
We're not talking about interim.
We're talking about selecting a search firm for what?
A search firm for the permanent superintendent, not for an interim.
Okay, so we don't have a big rush for the permanent superintendent.
I'm talking about a search
I
firm.
want to make a motion that the Bridgeport Board of Education issue an RFP in order to select a search firm for the permanent superintendent to be hired on July 1st, 2023.
Second.
You can't do that.
I just made the motion. No, there was no other motion on the floor. It's a proper motion,
Whoa, no.
properly seconded.
Agenda item reads, discussion and possible selection of a search firm.
Yes, and the RFP is related to the search firm.
No, it's selecting, not developing an RFP. If you wanted to do that, you should have submitted an item for tonight, discussion and possible action to issue an RFP for a search
And
firm.
that's on the special meeting.
That's
We're
not.
all just going to have to be here. We're talking about a search firm.
So-
The item is discussion and possible selection of a superintendent
And
search
if,
consultant.
and if we fail to select, that's the likely next step. So I entertained a motion to select one or the other of these two firms. Does somebody want to make a motion?
I'd like to discuss it.
Okay, what do you want to talk about?
So, especially since after last week, a lot of thought's been given to this. I see merits in both what Mr. Sokolovic is suggesting and also just selecting from these two search firms. I see benefits in search firm being local and knowing the local ways. I think that's helpful. I think these two nonprofit organizations are standing for the, for the basis. So I feel like there's benefit in moving forward with one of our Connecticut-based search firms. And since I did participate in the discussion about it, I did have the opportunity to ask questions of the gentleman from CES. And if anyone was interested in talking about these two search firms and what was discussed, we can talk about that a little bit. But then the other thing, as far as if these don't move forward, I don't know that it's necessary to solicit or seek firms from all over the country for this. I don't know that it's necessary. I don't know that would necessarily help the process. But like I said, I see the thought behind it. I just don't know that that's necessary. I feel as though it would be embarking on a very large process and journey that is not necessary. I feel like what's provided to us here is adequate and probably better than adequate, and especially the fact that it has the local knowledge, being from Connecticut. So that's just my thoughts about these two search firms as opposed to actually creating an RFP and going out to bid for others. So that's my thoughts.
Okay, Mr. Chair. I am not happy of either one of these search firms, and in front of you, I just passed down the paper with purchasing orders for the city of Bridgeport. I don't know if it made it all the way down, which reads in part, for the purchase of special professional services reasonably anticipated to exceed $1,000, but not reasonably anticipated to exceed $25,000, the contractor's officer may obtain proposals from no less than 3 vendors that provide such professional services. We've got on the table 2 vendors. This is a violation of the city purchasing ordinance, first of all.
Not a
And
violation.
second of all, I'm speaking, I have the floor.
Answering
And second
your
of
statement.
all, you can answer when I'm finished. Second of all, neither one of these search firms I appreciate as able to select an urban superintendent. One of the search firms has a lot of experience. They just placed the Fairfield superintendent, and they also placed, no disrespect to anybody, somebody in a position that we later found out had some stuff in their background. Now, this was not raised up during the meeting. It was not put up out in the forefront. Where we discovered this problem was way deep down in the letters of references. And that's 50% of the search firms that we have on the table right now. And the other one has never placed, in the recent memory and part of the packet, you don't see them placing anybody in Danbury. You don't see them placing anybody in New Haven. No urban district placement experience. We are creating an emergency. Are you saying in the next, I don't know how many days we even got left right now, in the next 80 days, we're going to be able to adequately hire a search firm that gets all the community input? Or are you saying we're going to have the next 80 days to select a permanent superintendent, and then we find out the superintendent got to start on May 1st. So we have an interim till May 1st, and then the permanent superintendent starts. So this year we'll have 3 superintendents rather than 2. My proposal, which will be hopefully at the next special meeting, if this is voted down, separates the process. We can use a search firm for the interim, which I wouldn't like, but which will be less damaging. We could pick one of the 2s, and then separate out. What's the rush? Issue an RFP, get a national search firm, and have it opened up. I mean, the last time we used a national search firm, we had some excellent candidates in the form of Dr. Bryce and a couple of other people
I would
that were
note,
found.
clarification, we did not issue an RFP and use a search firm to obtain Dr. Bryce.
In 2009, well, in 2019 and 2016, each time we lost a superintendent, search firms were engaged.
No, they were not.
I
We developed an RFP that went nowhere.
Correct. And we should develop an
didn't.
RFP
It
this
went
time as
nowhere.
well.
All right.
So I suggest the board votes this down and we go to a special meeting and we could address each and every one of these issues properly, openly, instead of like 3 hours into a meeting where almost every single member of the public has left.
Okay. Anyone else? Ms. Baptiste Perez?
My concern with just limiting to 2 options, I completely understand the fact that they're Connecticut-based. They are the 2 Connecticut options. one of the things that I decided to do was look at what other districts were doing, because those aren't the only 2 districts that exist. I think just in the interest of good faith and exploring other options, there should be a committee meeting where we all sit down and, oh, Westport, well, they use JE consultants. Oh, New Haven, they use, oh, I forgot the name of their consultants. There's a list of search firms that specialize in urban districts, at least to make sure we may be in compliance with the city ordinance, because that is how the tower of the legal hierarchy. You have federal law, state law, your city ordinance, our bylaws, any customs traditions of the board. I think we can ensure that we're in compliance by at least having a third option available and discussing it. That way we can be sure. And I think it's an effort in good faith for the community who still hear from various different organizations that wrote like the transparency and the need to have someone, let's move forward and see if we can find a third search firm and see if that works with us. What's their budget? What's that's going to be like? What is that going to look like for the district? I mean, if we don't want to run into it, but I'd rather cross my T's, dot my I's, and make sure that we have it. I mean, I did walk in a little bit late from work, but the community wants to feel like they're being heard, respected, and listened to. And even as a parent, and the way the information was initially presented, it's a bit offensive, because I want to put in that work. I want to read. I signed up to be a lawyer. That's what I do, whether it's a Debbie Downer or whatever the situation may be. I want to make sure I explore the options and try to make the best decision possible. And so if there's any holdup, that's my number one concern with the 2. I mean, I am curious, because we did recently hire a deputy superintendent, but there were other candidates that applied for the role. Who applied? Who were qualified? I mean, we did have a posting on Indeed for an assistant superintendent that was there beyond 90 days. Who applied? Who did apply? There are different options we can explore, and maybe there are cost savings, because I'm becoming very cost aware of what's going on in the district, that I don't immediately want to jump to, here's your 2 options and that's it. Because I think that take it or leave it approach has been fundamental to offending people in the community. It's that this or that, it's my way or the highway. I don't want that. I just want to be able to comply with the law, listen to our constituents, and be transparent. I mean, if we were to look at previous candidates, that's one option. I know we have people apply for assistant and deputy. Maybe we could look at those full lists. Or even for the sake that if there is a law that we're not going to be in compliance with and we need to have a third option, we can pull up the list. We can divide and conquer this as a board. Like, there's 9 of us. So, like, my concern with selecting one right now is that I don't feel like we've put in our full due diligence to look at our other options. And that doesn't necessarily have to be time consuming. That's something where I understand the FOIA law. We're not in compliance for the search committee. For the sake of making people happy, special, moving to executive. They still don't know what's going on, but they know that there's a meeting. I just want to make sure that the process includes the public, hears what they have to say, and is legally compliant. And so that's the point I'm going to emphasize. And I don't feel like just given these are the 2 Connecticut options meets any of that. It doesn't meet our due diligence. It doesn't meet listening to the community. And it may not meet what's required by the city. So I hope that we don't go forward today with selecting one, but maybe have another meeting, share as a group, because we're not subject to FOIA in this situation. Here's all the lists. Here's what, now I forgot every other city in the state of Connecticut, but here's what so-and-so used. Here's their costs. I called, I asked them what's their high, medium, and low. Oh, that's, I just want to be able to take the time in the process. Also, I believe it was mentioned, but we could potentially bifurcate, split it down, split the baby, have an interim to finish the school year, and really take our time to find somebody, like in the K booklet, that's going to participate in community forums, that's going to come and look, that's actually going to, if they're going to come from another state, purchase property, give them time to get to know the Park City. Because I want them to live here and make an investment. We're all required to live here in order to serve on the board. And so I just want to take our time. The interim can be someone to finish out the school year, because it is going to be 3 superintendents in one school year. And I think one of the things we need to really focus on is stability and how we're going to be able to achieve that, because there are real students, real tests, real issues, real policies we have to update, and doing that with such a heavy flow of change without having a consistent order, there's a lot. And so I'm hoping that we can split the baby, find an interim first, and take our time and make sure that we're in compliance with at least 3 search firms. One with, Joe was mentioning, Mr. Sokolovic was mentioning, Robert Truhl says last names. Mr. Sokolovic was mentioning that may cater to urban districts, and see what our options present before us all. So that's my 2 cents.
Yes.
Anyone else? Ms. Castillo?
So, Mr. Testani.
Before you start, I just want to clarify something because it's been said a couple of times.
Sure.
You can hear.
Yes, I want to clarify something because it's been said a couple of times. Under $25,000, getting 3 quotations. You are allowed with specialized services. If you don't have the full 3, you go to what you have and you write what's called a limited source justification memo to the file. It explains that while the policy states 3 proposals / quotes, in this case, there are only 2. Similar thing exists when we do things like school bus transportation and we get only 1 bid. We don't scrap it because we didn't get 3. We look into why this is the case. There's something specialized we're talking about. And as it stands, there just aren't 3 providers. So you write that sort of a justification to the memo. So this is not in violation of the 3 bid rule. So go ahead.
Thank you. Mr. Testani's last day will be? It's 90 days,
By
October.
his contract is November
31st?
23.
November 23rd, fine. I think we are pressed for an interim, so I do agree with you, Joe, on that point, that's the first conversation that we should be having is about an interim, not necessarily about the establishing the superintendent. A lot of the things that Ms. Baptiste Perez mentioned are processes, reviewing candidates, including past candidates, establishing a criteria for what we want in a superintendent, hosting community forums and focus groups. These are all processes that would be included in a search firm. So that being said, in our next meeting, I'm in agreement with you, Joe, that we should separate those 2 items. We should address first the issue of how we are going to move forward with establishing an interim. And then I think, me personally, I would prefer to be proactive in looking for a search firm. We have these 2 at hand. There's a lot of other districts who also use 2. I read recently that West Hartford used 3. So there is that possibility that there is a 3rd one, and I'm willing to consider whatever that 3rd one might be, especially if they specialize in working with urban districts, but I have not heard that name yet. You know, I've been hearing a lot about, oh, there's hundreds of search firms. Where's the list? Is there a list? Do you have a list?
I got a list at least 30.
Is it
30,
in the
40,
state of
and it could be
Connecticut?
found- No, they're not in the state of Connecticut, but New York City's like 30 miles away. I'm 50 miles away. We got.
Regional?
Yeah, we could expand to regional. We haven't even looked. Now, the benefit. Can I continue? Because I want to talk about the
If you go that
benefits.
route, I'm just going to explain. If you go that route and cast that wide a net, at that rate, you will be obligated to issue a full-blown RFP.
Right.
And decision is ours tonight, but that process alone is going to take 4 or 5 months. And then we'll be right back here looking at various proposals that will likely include these 2.
Right.
I had one more question for Ms. Baptiste Perez. You had mentioned that there was a list of search firms that specialize in urban districts.
I've looked at search firms used by urban districts.
In the state of Connecticut or otherwise?
In a combination, I looked at New Haven, I looked at what New York had used, I looked at Boston, I tried to find Miami. But I think what's key is I was never asked to share. We never had the meeting to share. And why is this the case? Because we have a motion in front of the selection of the consultant. So we never had the opportunity to talk about options CDE or send around, hey, pump the brakes, let's talk about this.
Right.
So,
Mr.
Testani, he would like to clarify a
I
couple
just
of
want to
things.
clarify a couple of things because current sitting urbans in Connecticut, Stanford came from within, was the assistant who was just promoted. Danbury, same situation. New Haven, same situation. Hartford, same situation. New Britain just did a search, if you want to consider New Britain comparable to Bridgeport. CES did that search. Boston, there was a search firm out of Texas, and I only know that because they contacted me to apply. So that's what kind of reach you get from those national searches. They just throw stabs in the dark at, hey, somebody recommended you. Are you interested? I mean, okay, but.
Would you like to clarify how many search firms contacted you and their names, so maybe we can filter them out of our list?
The one from Boston, I can get you the name. He's up there out of Texas.
Okay.
Again, at that rate, if you go outside of the geographical limitations of Connecticut, you can't, at that point, cherry pick. You would need to do a full-blown, publicly advertised RFP nationwide. Because if you pull somebody in from Texas, somebody from Ohio is going to say, well, what about me? You didn't call me. So at that rate, once you cast that kind of a big net, you are going to have to go nationwide, full-blown RFP, which is a 4 to 5 month process. There will be oral presentations, there'll be scoring involved, because at that process, you're going to have to justify the firm that you picked in the event somebody protests. So it's a much more rigorous process that you go through and much more lengthy as a result. And at the end of it all, you'll be in a room here looking to pick a firm, and all the time will have passed, And then your market may well have dried up because now we're in March or April and nobody's looking for a job at that stage of the school year. They're looking now. They're looking for their next move for the next school year. And so you're going to pick a firm, you're going to kick this process out for a really long time. And at that rate, you're doing a disservice to the school system because you're not committing to any stability because the interim just goes on and on and on. So I think we have an obligation to conduct this process in a timely fashion.
Mm-hmm.
We have a couple of proposals, and unless you find them both totally unacceptable, I don't see why we wouldn't move on one or the other of them.
I like to continue before I was interrupted. You say to justify protests. We just received as a board a letter regarding transparency from ballpark, maybe about 10 different organizations in the city already writing newspaper articles about the lack of transparency. The protest is there. It sounds like we're just trying to bypass it and ignore it.
Oh,
I mean,
how so?
I'm going to continue with my point in line while I'm discussing. We're going to ignore urban. We're going to ignore someone looking. We're going to ignore using all of our brains and brainstorming and discussing different search firm options. Maybe if we had looked for, well, here's the urban ones. No, I don't think it's a potential. After careful consideration, I think we should just probably stick to these two. We never got to that. It was automatically given to us that these are the two options, and that internally starts the protest. And that is what all those letters we're receiving from parents about. Those are what the letters from different organizations are about. To say that someone's not going to be looking for a job in the middle of the year, clearly, we got the prime example of someone that will leave in the middle of the year. And it's been demonstrated even amongst teachers. You could be in a contract and leave for whatever purpose or reason. So I'm not going to ignore the fact that it's been done in other districts. Fairfield has someone coming in the middle of November. To say that it's going to delay the process by 5 months, everyone, or it sounds like a majority may be in agreement that having the interim for the school year and giving us the time, if we start, 5 months? October, November, December, January, February. It could take up to 4 months. March, April, May, June. Get a move to Bridgeport over the summer, start the school year. There's a transition plan almost built in by taking our time. And also, the community forums is not necessarily built into there, but just actually paying attention to public speaking. Because what I'm talking about with the community being mad, it's reading your emails because they're mad. There's a lack of transparency. And the frustration comes is we just haven't had that meaningful dialogue. It's been given to us and we haven't even discussed whether there should be a number 3. And so that's where, and honestly, when I think about that timeline, that actually works out perfectly because people are going to need to move in the summer. You decide the school year is not for you. You got 90 days to decide whether you want to resign. I don't see the issue in that. I think paying attention to the big timeline is key. 5 months sounds like a lot. But when you make a timeline, it's not that bad.
Mr. Chair, putting this off will have a dual benefit. I mean, I originally was trying to get it done today. It didn't squeeze in, but we could still consider, we haven't even discussed meaningfully recruiting from within. We haven't discussed meaningfully grabbing a retired superintendent for 1 year to cover for this period of time to cover the gap. So we are not under a time pressure for the permanent superintendent. The only time pressure that exists is for the interim superintendent. And I think we should have this special meeting, add any agenda items that you so choose to that, to fit every scenario, like we're selecting a retired superintendent, and we could get this done in a timely fashion to have an interim superintendent here, be it from the staff, be it from retired superintendents, or be it from one of these possible 2 search firms if we don't even add a 3. And then that'll limit anything, because as I said before, the way we hired the last superintendent, no disrespect to Mr. Testani, he has labored under a cloud his entire administration and did not ever I don't think he ever really got the trust of the community because of the way we as a board behaved in the hiring process. It was not transparent when we hired him as permanent superintendent, and
that's
that was
why
our
I
fault.
want to get an outside firm to take us out of it. This takes us out of it. So we're not doing this ourselves like we did last time.
Right.
The last time, we wound up placing a help wanted ad. And we interviewed them personally in public forums, and that's where it all got so messy. We need to be removed and just be the people who are watching and directing the search firm. This is where we want to go. Help us weed people out so we get down to the finalist candidates that we want to bring to the public.
Well, absolutely.
We never do that. We always try to self-perform these functions,
right, absolutely,
instead of hiring somebody to do the work that we need to have
and
done.
I'm not discounting
And
the search firm.
let me finish. And we're talking about putting more time into finding a search firm than to getting the actual superintendent.
The permanent superintendent.
The actual permanent superintendent. We're talking about spending 5 months to get a
Finding
firm.
a permanent superintendent? Yes.
To get a firm, no, to get,
Kate
just to
stood
get
up there
a.
and told us 4 to 6 months.
Joe, let me finish. We're talking about spending 5 months just to get the firm so that we can find the superintendent. And that process alone, the search alone, takes only 3 months. So we're going to spend 5 months to embark on a 3-month process. When we've got something here, and there's nothing wrong with either of these. They both could do the work. They both indicated that they are going to embark on a robust public participation process. And this is where we are. Ms. Castillo.
I just wanted to say what I don't like about the option of hiring a search firm outside of Connecticut or conducting a nationwide search is that at that point, you're moving away from candidates that are familiar with the Bridgeport Public School District. And I think that we do want somebody who is familiar with us, because if they're not familiar with us as a board, with us as a district, with our population of students and parents and families and teachers, I think that there's the possibility, we run the risk, like you were saying, or like Joe was saying about, laboring under this cloud. And then, they don't have the same investment in staying with us and sticking it out. And next, they're gone and we're in the same place again. I've said this before and I'll say it again. I don't want to hire a superintendent from Arkansas. I think that's irrelevant. I want to hire someone who's familiar with the district. And I think that the community would agree with that. And a way to consider that is by looking at candidates that are local, that are familiar with our district, perhaps past candidates. But again, I want to emphasize, I think that that's a process that should be done under the guidance and support of a search committee. Thank you.
So do you want to make a motion to pick one of these?
We
can continue discussing.
No, because according to Robert's rules, once there's a motion on the table, there has to be a decision on it. Discussion hasn't ended, and also we've been constantly violating Robert's rules, but you're trying to move something forward when discussion's not done. You're leading. You're actually making a leading statement. Are you ready to put a motion? No, because we're still discussing this.
What do you want to discuss further?
You know what? You know what I want to discuss? Familiar. Because to be familiar, yeah, someone from Arkansas, but someone from, what is it, Farmington, or Jesus, was it Killingworth or Torrington? How familiar are they with urban school districts? I've heard of Bridgeport. I drive past it, but I don't stop there, not even for gas. And so to limit, just because I know Bridgeport doesn't mean I want to deal with Bridgeport. We talk about someone familiar, we're talking about familiar with dealing with urban school issues. So if that's a superintendent that knows how to deal with the gun violence that's coming from Chicago, they may be more qualified with dealing with urban issues than anyone else coming from Connecticut.
So do you want to take a vote on that motion?
If we're looking for someone, I'm not done speaking, I have the floor, thank you, Mr. Chair. If we're looking for someone to deal with our abysmal test scores, because 80% of our kids are failing. That's what the test score says. That's what the SBAC says. And so if we're talking about we want to move towards student achievement and success, what Connecticut's offering may not be able to cater to our district. So then we have to pay attention. Is it going to a combination? Is there someone that exists that will have the urban experience and the ability to take a failing district up and move us forward? Being able to live in the district, if we look at something local, but why do I have to move? I live in Fairfield. I'm 15 minutes away. That makes absolutely no sense. Why am I going to sell my house if I can get to my job in 15? That doesn't even make sense.
Are we talking about search firms
logistically, and so I'm talking about why the need for a search firm to have more of a national touch, so that way we can see more qualified candidates. We have a search firm that's able to serve and find candidates, and at least for us as a board to do our due diligence, because I did not have any say in search firm A and B, and it was given to us. And as a member of the board, it's one thing I've been told and I've heard, whether it's from council, rubber stamping without doing any work. And so I take it very serious when I have court motions, deposition preps, all this stuff to do for work. I'm here saying I want to do the work and I want to collaborate, and I'm being ignored. All I'm saying is another conversation to figure it out. The timetable does not seem absolutely ludicrous and unreasonable. If you're saying 5 months and it can be completed in 8, guess what? We still had a school year with a consistent temporary superintendent. We have a valid and enforceable contract with someone able to move in the district. And it gives the community, not a community forum, but if we pay attention to what's been said consistently and every speaker about being transparent, it gives us as a board legitimacy towards paying attention. And it's not going to be offended. Even if we had another meeting and then it came back, we want K but another one, that's just 2. But we haven't done our work to figure out the 2. We only have the 2 because that's what Connecticut has. And we're not limited to what Connecticut has. So that's my only request, is just for us to put in the time to see what other options.
First, actually, Albert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to say this in very clear. And Mr. Testani, you see, and I believe you know what we're going through, and I hope you understand what we're going through. Also, we need to be as a team to do this kind of work and job. I know it's not easy, so it's a process, but then we need to be in the same page and work as a team in this situation. He said, she said, I'm not gonna do this. Come on, people's watching us, and I feel bad when they say board members. And when they say board members, my name is included there. Maybe some of you, they don't care, but I care. Because I know we want the best for our schools, for our students, and for everyone. So when they say board members, and my name is there, it made me very stressful about that. And there's gonna be no rush to get a superintendent to school. I know I have a process, it's a protocol, but going crazy because we need a superintendent, no. Let's do the right thing, because I don't want to do the mistake I did in the beginning. I'm not gonna do it this time because it was in the beginning, I was new as a board member, but at this time, I want to take my time to research who's the person be for us. I had to work with us, I had to work with a lot of people. Mr. Warden, and I'm going to, I know you know this, remember us, our board members, we vote for you as the chair, and I hope you understand you as the chair communicate with one of each us the way it's supposed to be. Not because you're the chair, you can do whatever you want and communicate with whoever you want. I want you to understand that be you the chair, communicate with us correctly, very professional, because that's what we're here for. We'll work together as a team. Also, I would like to have, whoever is going to run to, who's going to be the people's running interim or superintendent, have a community forum. Why community forum? Because the community needs to know who's going to be our superintendent of school. They have to deal with staff. They have to deal with so many people. And I know parents like to speak and talk and ask questions. What is the reason you want to be superintendent here in Bridgeport School? Also, I would love to have, if it's possible, the president of the unions be part of this interview, because I know the president of the union had to be involved and speak and talk with the superintendent of school. And I know some of the president of the union that would love to be part, because they have to deal with so many things. Mr. Testani, you know you have to deal with so many president of the union you have, it's not easy. But it was nice to be them part of this. And the last thing I'm going to say, and I'm always say, be careful with your body language. The body language says so many things. Our community, our parent is watching us. And I hate when they, like I said, board members. And I'm here to clarify that when they say board members, I want my name be out, because I will blast. I don't care who's the person be negative. The way they deal with us. So we have to be careful about the body language. That's only that I can say. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Is there anyone else? Ms. Castillo?
Thank you, Albert, for mentioning about the union, and I believe that's something I also would like to address in the next agenda item. For this agenda item, I would like to make a motion to table it for the special meeting, and I would recommend that this item remain the last agenda item, since there are other more pressing matters that need to be discussed.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Discussion and possible action to include external stakeholders on superintendent search committee was something Ms. Castillo brought up.
Thank you. So, I mean, obviously it's become abundantly clear that we need to work on our transparency, that we could do more to include the community in the conversation. And I was wondering if we would be interested in expanding our search committee. So currently the search committee has our 9 board members on there. I would like to expand the search committee to include some additional seats, including external stakeholders. I would recommend, first and foremost, and this is open for discussion, perhaps a seat for each union. I believe there's 4 unions, so administrators, teachers, security guards, and then
There's 5 unions, so you have 5. BCAS, that's the certified administrators, the BACS, the supervisors.
Okay.
The BEA, obviously the teachers union, the largest union. NAACP represents security and most of food services and then there's a couple of others, other positions, but very few. And then ASME 1522, which represents all the paraprofessionals and clerical staff.
Okay. So that's what I would like to recommend. It's open for discussion. Is there anyone else who would like to recommend or come into agreement?
What are your thoughts on that?
I agree with Ms. Castillo.
Okay.
I agree as well. And if there's possible to have either a community representation as far as parents, and even if we can push it to have our students weigh in. It's just a matter, and I get it that that's a lot of seats, but I value all of their different voices and opinions about this process because of how it's been done. So, yeah, community representation, if we want students, even students.
So how
I don't even know if that's
Because,
possible.
hang. So if we determine that one person from each union, then we're putting the ball in their court for them to pick someone from their ranks to serve on this committee. If you expand it to a student and a parent, there's some confidentiality issues that may arise. But how do you determine who's going to be the lucky parent or the lucky student? Because now we're interviewing to be on the committee.
Got it.
That's going to interview people.
That's a very, and very important thing. I just need to know for me to feel confident in this process that there is some type of representation. If we're gonna already have the unions involved, we gotta do something.
Yeah.
That's all.
Yeah, and I think.
And I don't want this to become totally unwieldy either, so.
If I could just, I want to just answer her one sentence. I just want to say that I think that I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you fully. I think that that is probably best addressed, or they're best brought into the fold with focus groups and community forums. Go ahead.
That's fine.
Yeah,
That's a whole other element. That's where we're not even
That's
thinking
what I was going to suggest, because in looking at all the other firms and all that, they do have community forums. And we should definitely have a community forum for each stakeholder group as one. I kind of would be uncomfortable to have union representation at the table participating in an active. Is that what you're talking about, having a seat on the committee?
They don't vote. This is a search committee. The search committee doesn't vote, but at the end, they would recommend finalist candidates that the board takes a vote on.
But
so in the end, it's only us 9.
Right, but I think it would probably be better served to have days or times dedicated to those search people. I mean, because if we're going to have, say we're having the unions discuss that, are they going to sit here while we're discussing student concerns? Are they going to sit here while we discuss other concerns? If we just have like focus groups and focus times on them and have a back and forth dialogue with them, get their input and all
Unions have
that.
actually reached out and specifically asked. They would really like to have a voice in whittling down who the final superintendent will be. Now, they understand they don't get a vote of who's going to get an offer, but I think, these are the folks who, the union leadership are the folks who are going to be interacting with the new superintendent on all kinds of issues regarding their membership. And they've each got their own unique perspective of what their membership needs from a superintendent. And I think that would be a good
also
collaborative effort.
Can I just say one thing to Ms. Baptiste Perez's point earlier? You want to get, as you mentioned, the best person and somebody that is versed in whatever you're looking for. If they are currently employed, confidentiality, I will tell you. And you guys may not see it that way. You speak to any sitting superintendent, confidentiality in the process is paramount, or they will not participate. So you will lose anybody who is currently employed from applying. I'll tell you that right now. There's not a superintendent in the country that's going to be actively looking if it's public and their name gets out. So the union members that participate need to sign some sort of document, that confidentiality document, because if not, they're not going to risk their employment. Maybe in certain states, there are some states that have the luxury of giving long contracts, but most states do not, and they're not going to risk their current employment for a possibility of coming to Bridgeport.
Yeah, may I be recognized?
Go ahead.
I share the same concerns, and also Mr. Testani has said it. I think the question is posed a little bit ambiguous as to who are external stakeholders, external outside of the board, or still internal to the entire school district. That wasn't clear to me. Also, one of the notes I do have is, are you referring to specific non-disclosure agreements that would have to be executed? Because then that's going to be an additional cost and process to it. It's been said, and I do agree, like who gets to select is going to be the chosen one. And their point of order. So this is my train of thought, but there is confidentiality issues for sure. And so being conscious of that, who are the external stakeholders still isn't clear to me. Is it limited to the 5 unions? External, again, wasn't clear. When I first read external, are you talking about outside organizations? Again, the same concern regarding confidentiality, non-disclosure agreements, making sure it doesn't leak. Because, I mean, to a certain extent, who wants their current employer to know that they're aware looking elsewhere for another job? And so you got to be real, to a certain part, like realistic, and to what extent are you getting them involved? Because the motion so far, or is there a motion or whatever, this discussion point so far seems convoluted. And who's external? Who's going to be the chosen one? Who's going to be, who defines what a stakeholder is? If I live in Bridgeport and my child's here, why am I not a stakeholder? If my organization is found and is aimed towards educating or the empowerment of young women in the Bridgeport school system, why am I no longer a stakeholder? Who gives you the ability to define me? And so there is an element of confusion to the terminology of this. And, although I think it's well intended to have different voices involved, it sounded like it was being discussed that it's hit in the community forum aspect of it. Mm-hmm. So why are we giving them such an early stage at who's going to sit at the table and what are the risks associated with it? Because I do want the best candidate. I do want the most qualified and experienced to really help an issue. Right. Thank you, Mike.
Okay. He's still here.
And so I want to make sure that in doing so, we're not going to deter candidates, because what Mr. Testani says has validity to it. And
well, and I think that goes for anyone who's on the committee. Okay. Anyone, whether it's us or any external parties we bring into the mix. We all, and I don't know how enforceable it is. You sign a confidentiality agreement and you violate it. What are we going to do? Really? So it's to a large degree. Well, yeah, you could drop them from the committee, but at that point the damage has been done. So a lot of this is just
the
an
cost
honor
of another
system.
search firm, that person would be liable for the expenses if they have personal property attached to their property.
I guess you could go that route.
So,
go ahead.
All right, so,
and Macaron, he has his hand up.
Does he still?
No, I did. I took it down.
Okay. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
So I think this discussion has laid it out pretty well. I think the intention, what you're saying, is right on, but I also think it's handled through focus groups and community forums. I don't feel the need to expand the search committee. That's my personal opinion. But I do think that the point of getting input is well received. I think we all agree. I hope we all agree with that. And I think there's already a mechanism in place for that because of all the things we just discussed. Who are the ones that are on it? How many are there? There are 5, are there 8, are there 9? So I feel like that's what we need to do. And I think Joe's point of having them separate forums, for different reasons, that's the whole point, I think would satisfy your desire without actually expanding the search committee itself. And then having to, who gets selected and all the stuff that goes with it. So that's my opinion on it. And so that's it.
That's good. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely love the idea and I appreciate the intention of the idea. It's just that even just one more thing, I think it's probably redundant at this point to mention one more problematic portion of that. A lot of our staff and teachers do not live here, and we're elevating them to a position higher than the students and parents who live here. They'll have a seat at a table while the people who pay the salaries of everybody and elect us don't have an equitable seat as such. So I think the community forum is probably the best way to go for each stakeholder group.
And I'll just add, I appreciate, even though the hour is long, and I'm probably gonna pass out pretty soon, I appreciate the fact that we actually had this dialogue for those that did manage to stay, because this is all we were asking for. It's just the idea of what are the steps, what's gonna happen. And I know we have another meeting coming, special meeting, but that's important for them to understand that there will be a community forum, or there will be this or that where they can have their say in the meeting. That's all that, that helped that communication portion, although it was long. That's all I want to say. Pass out.
May I be recognized?
Sure.
Okay, so thank you for that very robust conversation, guys. So a couple things I want to touch base on. Just my thinking in terms of recommending the unions. One, that they already have a structure in place, so if it's something that we wanted, for them to consider that, you put a teacher forward that lives in Bridgeport or whatever the case. It might be Anna Baptista or whatever, you know what I mean? They might
That's kind
decide,
of what I would have envisioned, that they
yeah,
would
me
appoint
too.
themselves.
And I think she does live in Bridgeport. No?
No, Cheshire.
What? Shocking. Anyway, nevertheless, so the point was that I felt that they had the structure in place to make that decision based on each group, right? So that was point number one. Point number two made about NDAs. I think that the board should sign NDAs anyway, those who are participating in the search committee, because the way this board behaves on social media and whatnot, I think it's important for us to exercise professionalism and be discreet, so that we are protecting the identities of our candidates and respecting the process as it should be, and as it has been exercised in best practices. So that's it. Also, one more thing that I wanted to say was that this is just an agenda item. There's no motion on the floor, and the reason why it says discussion and possible action to include external stakeholders is because that's something that we are here to discuss. So there's no, I had no, we discussed the language for this too.
That's why we say possible. It
right,
may or may not
it's
happen.
open, it's broad, it's, it gives, my original language was community. We expanded to external so that it includes more than just community-based organizations. Fine. And I'm glad that we had this conversation so that everyone had a chance to suggest an external stakeholder of their choice, of their reference, of their recommendation, what have you. I'm comfortable not moving forward with expanding the seats. I just felt that this was an agenda item that was necessary for us to have a productive conversation about next steps. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. I just want to ask a quick question before everybody goes. Unless everybody wildly objects to it, I will ask the state association to reach out to the retired superintendents to see if any of them are interested. And if they are, to send their resume. You can look at it, you can do whatever you want with it.
For the interim search?
For the interim, because I think we need to start looking at that too. So anybody, and then decide, maybe nobody will respond. We need to start somewhere.
Can we table that to our next meeting?
Mr.
Because it feels like it's a motion.
It's not a motion. I said, unless everybody wildly objects, I'll ask them to reach out to their list to see who's interested. And then if you want to reach out to any of them to pull them in for an interview, you can do that.
Mr. Chair.
But you need the information first.
Right. Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Or not.
Right. Yeah, I have no objection to it, but I just ask that it be added to the agenda that I submitted for the special meeting to be inclusive